dated the 29th of February, 2024 at 11:50 a.m. And the note reads, Your Honor, can we please receive clarification as to the verbiage of count 3? Specifically, in order to constitute tampering, that's in quotes, does the defendant need to have physically altered, destroyed, concealed, or removed an item or thing, i.e., in quotes, physical contact? The second question, further, the information never mentions the term accessory or accessorial liability. Following the juror instructions would lead one to believe having accessorial liability is enough to prove a defendant guilty of tampering with physical evidence. Is that the case, or is the section titled accessorial liability from page 44 of the jury instructions misleading? Well, of course, the jury would not know what 53A-8A means. So the court will have to explain. First, they would have to have, hopefully the jury has a copy of the information.
Yes,
Is there just one copy or there's 6 copies?
just one.
So the court would first direct them to the information and explain that in counts 3 and 5, so the court will read those counts again and indicate 53A-8A means accessorial liability or as an accessory. Now, concerning the second question, or rather the first question, can we please receive clarification as to the verbiage of count 3? Specifically, in order to constitute tampering, does the defendant need to have physically altered, destroyed, concealed, or removed an item or thing, i.e. physical contact? Court is just taking a look at its instructions.
While the court is doing it, may I just retrieve my notes from the conference room outside?
Yes.
For a moment?
Well, the court will hear from counsel because it appears from the instructions that although the phrase used in the note by the juror, physical contact, does not appear in the instruction. Court would just hear from counsel.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon. I think that the short answer to the jury's question is no, because she's charged under an accessorial liability theory with respect to those counts. And so the jury need only find that she intentionally aided, solicited, importuned someone else in their effort to commit the crime of tampering with evidence. That's the law as I understand accessorial liability. So I think the short answer to their question is no.
Attorney Schoenhorn.
They have to act with the exact same intent. It's just another way of, what I think the court should do is, as it suggested, should reread the charge on tampering and then read accessorial liability together. In other words, I think the way the court had read it, it was sort of separate. So if it reads the tampering elements, that instruction, and then accessorial liability with that, it may clarify. Because I think the way Your Honor set it up, it's, you have it separate after conspiracy. And if you read those two together, I think it answers the question without any added verbiage.
Well, I think that it's not necessary to give the jury more information than they're asking. So what the court intends to do is read count 3 again, indicate that in count 3 and in count 5, they will see the Connecticut General Statute reference to 53A-155A1 and 53A-8A. 53A-8A refers to accessorial liability. That addresses question number 2, or concern number 2. Concerning number 1, again, they're concerned about count 3, charged as an accessory. So the court is not going to indicate, other than explaining that it is accessorial liability, that physical contact is needed. If they have a second question about that, the court will entertain a second question. She's charged as an accessory. And the court will ask, does that respond to your question? And if the foreign person says no, then the court may have to go further.
As long as the court, it makes clear though that the party has to act with the same intent.
Well, they're not asking about that, counsel. An accessory can be charged just as the principal. That's the short answer. Well, the court will hear counsel on that response if they are not satisfied with the court's explanation. An accessory can be charged just as a principal can be charged. You wish to be heard, counsel?
I just repeat what I indicated earlier, Judge, is that they're asking a very specific question about physical contact, and the state of the law, as I understand it, is the answer is no. And I would ask the court to simply instruct them no, physical contact is not required.
Well, do you not think, counsel, that the court should also explain again accessorial liability pursuant to how the information charges it?
I have no objection to that. I just think that the question which is being asked should be answered more directly, because there seems to be some confusion.
Well, the court does not want to go beyond or leave their question short. Accessorial liability does not require physical contact. That's the response. So rather than just say no, accessorial liability does not require physical contact. We can bring the jury out. Counsel stipulate, please.
Yes, Judge.
Yes.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Court has a copy of the note sent out by the foreperson on this date, the 29th of February, 2024. And the court will have this marked as court exhibit, is this 5, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Court exhibit 5. So the court will read the entire note and then answer the questions as they were posed. Your Honor, can we please receive clarification as to the verbiage of count 3? Specifically, in order to constitute tampering, does the defendant need to have physically altered, destroyed, concealed, or removed an item or thing, i.e. physical contact? The second inquiry, further, the information never mentions the term accessory or accessorial liability. Following the juror instructions would lead one to believe having accessorial liability is enough to prove a defendant guilty of tampering with physical evidence. Is that the case, or is the section titled accessorial liability from page 44 of the jury instructions misleading? Well, thank you for your note. If you do not have a copy of the information, the court will read the information, count 3, and explain what those numbers at the end of that section mean. Count 3, tampering with physical evidence, and the aforesaid state's attorney further accuses the defendant, Michelle Troconis, of tampering with physical evidence and charges that on or about the 24th day of May 2019 within the city of Hartford in the area of Albany Avenue, the defendant, Michelle Troconis, believing that a criminal investigation conducted by a law enforcement agency was pending and about to be instituted, and an official proceeding was pending and about to be instituted, did alter, destroy, conceal, and remove a thing with the purpose to impair its availability in that criminal investigation and official proceeding in violation of section 53A-155A1 and 53A-8 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Now, 53A-155A1 is the substantive offense of tampering with physical evidence. When you see 53A-8A, that is accessorial liability. Wherever you see that statute number, 53A-8A, that indicates accessorial liability. Number 2, further, the information never mentions the term accessorial liability or accessory. Following the juror instructions would lead one to believe having accessorial liability is enough to prove a defendant guilty of tampering with physical evidence. Is that the case, or is the section titled accessorial liability from page 44 of the jury instructions misleading? The court believes it has answered that in the first question. The answer is accessorial liability does not require physical contact. If that does not adequately respond to your inquiry, you can send the court out another note. And we invite you to just resume your deliberation.
Thank you.
Oh, let's hope for something today, guys. Wow. Looks like the lawyers
Stand
at
in a recess.
Troconis they must be really, really close for them to get here every time they got a question. Can you imagine how nerve-wracking that would be? Oh, Jazzy's barking again. You guys will have to watch that TMZ that she panel bombed me on. I don't understand accessorial liability or whatever he said. Yeah, the way I'm seeing it, or I'm understanding it, I'm not a lawyer, so it's just, it seems like because she was around him after he did the deed and basically went with him, would that be accessorial liability? Just the fact that she was there and knew what went on? If you are in Discord, at the very, very top of our list of cases, there's a link for TMZ. And I think I put 2 or 3 of them on that I've done. But the last one, yeah, Jazzy totally panel bombed me. You'll get a good giggle out of it. I was surprised they kept it, but they got a hold of me yesterday and said, no, it was perfect for the show. I can't stream it because that is their content. So that's where you get it, is in Discord at the very top at the TMZ link. You'll get a giggle out of it. Yeah. Harvey Levin was laughing. His friend was laughing. It was like, oh my God. Right, Mom? It was like, oh no. I start throwing cereal at them and saying, hang up on me. Hang up on me. I don't know if I've been on there 5 times, maybe, I think. They just send me something on Skype saying, you want to be on again today? It's like, okay. And it's short, like 30-second spots, but it's fun. Mind of Monsters, Mom, watch for her too. She's on there as well. She does her thing as well. But yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It is cool. It's fun. It's fun. I really didn't expect Jazzy to panel bomb me, although she does bark. We know she barks. She literally, I only, like I say, 15 to 30 seconds. And she barked through the whole thing. And I'm like, I start laughing. That's what I do when I panic. Yeah, there's just a couple in there and they're fast. They're really fast. We've got a girl here that does a lot of my deliveries if I need things picked up and I'm not feeling good or whatever. She said that she had seen it, which surprised me that locals were watching it, but she had seen it and said that she's in the background telling Jazzy, like, smarten up. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, if they ever need bloopers. Yeah, it's fun, isn't it, Mom? Mom actually got me going with this. So yeah, it's I don't have there's really nobody else I can really think of, but I get a giggle out of it. Yeah. And they seem to call, like this one wasn't very far in between. Usually it's like a month. But yeah, that was that. May as well give everybody a giggle, right? I'm the same. Yeah, I'm the same. I used to watch it all the time, but I don't usually, it's not something I usually watch anymore. I'm looking for true crime, right? But the last one I did, well, this one kind of related to crime because there was an altercation between Taylor Swift's dad, allegedly, and a paparazzi. And then the one I did before was about Dominic Dunn, which was interesting to me because that's very much true crime. And yeah, usually get to pick, but this time there's just, you're doing this one. Okay. And they didn't prep me this time. Usually you get prepped. Are they still prepping you, Mom? Or do you just get the call and say, this is what you're doing now? Yeah, who would have figured TMZ? Yeah. Isn't that was the saddest case ever. Yeah, and her dad, I started watching him. I looked at him up, like, lots, deep dived on him, and when he passed away, I found it really sad. I found it really, really sad. But he even did something on his daughter. The Kansas City parade, I just got off work by 1 minute, and he called and said, "Wanna come on? No, heads up." Yeah, that's pretty much the same as me. They must know that we've done it enough times now that yeah, he basically just said, "What are you planning on saying?" I told him, and that was it. Yeah, a stalker fan. We OG, gangsta. They got me through, Mind and Monsters. She hooked me up. They hooked us up. I don't know how it works. Yeah, they just started calling. I said, "Yeah, I'm willing," and you bet. No, we are still waiting. They had another question talking about one of the charges. They wanted an explanation. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Something different, right? I sent it to my aunt and she's like, "Can I share this?" And I'm like, "Well, TMZ did, so yeah." There you go. I covered the OnlyFans and they messaged me on Twitter, and then the producer got in touch with me. Yeah, just awesome. Just awesome. Lots of fun. It is cool. My daughter-in-law screened record my last one and put me on TikTok. Oh, that's so awesome. That's awesome. I've seen one guy advertise his channel. I don't know. I have not done that. Right? Oh my word. Yeah, you can't very well tell people not to share it. TikTok or TMZ's got a bit of an audience. Yeah, no, don't share that. Yeah, they're fun. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, no doubt. I'll end up on their bloopers. Yeah. What are you throwing your dog? Hang up on me. It was puffed wheat. Just too funny. I mean, seriously, you can't take yourself too seriously. We can't. I mean, I had one, I was trying to record for everybody. Oh, Jazzy's a lab. I was out trying to video this really nice spot that we go to. We take our dogs, they play in the water and blah, blah, you know. So I'm streaming this, and all of a sudden, well, not streaming, I was taping it, and all of a sudden the dogs got like feisty. Well, I'm holding on to Lizzie, which is our Roddy, and oh my God, they're playing so hard. I didn't let go of the leash. I mean, I should have, because I ended up flying through the air and landing on my face and still taking this video while I was laughing. And I put that in Discord, like, and out, like, you can't take yourself too seriously. Yeah, we deal with very serious stuff 24/7. So, yeah, kind of nice to have something a little bit different, right? My son, I sent it to him. He hasn't seen it yet. Well, he's just going to shake his head at me like, oh, mother. Oh, my word. So I'm really hoping that we get an answer today. Oh, la. Yeah, I expected it to go a little bit faster for this verdict. I'm not sure why I thought that, but I did. I didn't think there was going to be. Well, it's been what, 7.5, maybe almost 8 hours that they've been deliberating. 2 hours yesterday, and then since this morning. So they're obviously taking it pretty darn serious and reviewing everything. But and my personal opinion, guilty. This is why I wear hats. I have a substantial hat collection. Every color, every make, everything you can think of. Because the girls got to match, right? Oh my. So maybe what I'll do is I'm going to do this. Mm-hmm. There you go, guys. I started up a poll. Check out the poll. I'd love to know your opinions. I'm still wondering about accessorial liability in legal terms. Hey Siri, what does accessorial liability mean?
Okay, I found this on the web for what does accessorial liability mean. Check it out.
I will, thank you. Why do I always say thank you to? Okay. Accessorial liability occurs when a person, company is involved in the contravention of a workplace law. When this happens, they're treated the same way as an employer. What? Being involved, assisted, recommended, or caused the contravention, influenced the contravention, for an example, by making threats, was knowingly concerned in or was a party to the contravention, conspired with others, which resulted in the contravention. So that's what they're saying. For some reason, they're applying that, though, to a workplace. Let me see. Siri, what is accessorial liability?
Here's what I found.
Thank you. You're welcome. Okay, the second one was the same. So they're not really telling us a lot. I don't know if that helped at all or not. California hot springs closed indefinitely. Yeah, it is. Happy leap day. Happy leap year. Oh, it's so sad. There is so much going on. I've got some stuff up I want to talk about Elijah Vu, but I don't want to get started on that and then have a verdict. Yay, I love polls. Yeah, the Madeline Soto case in Florida. There's another one. Oh my word. There's so much negative going on in this world right now. It's just very sad. I don't know what the reason why. I sometimes wonder if the world and all the citizens, if we're imploding because we're expecting things to not last long anymore. We're all getting maybe a little uncomfortable what's happening with these different wars. Oh, I'm waiting for a presser on one of my first cases from Ormond. They found remains yesterday, and I'm about to crawl out of my skin waiting for an update. Oh my, isn't it something though? We get into these. And Jennifer Dulos, this case, I remember when she went missing, and it's literally a heartbreak. I look scary as ish, but I'll pop on for a second. I just ate a blackened chicken sandwich. Nummy, nummy. Oh, missing for 20 years. Oh, my word. Oh, my word. Fingers crossed. You know, Daniel Robinson, is that the right name? Last name? Look at how long he's been missing. It's just unreal. So I did change my thumbnail just to say verdict watch and questions. I hadn't made one up. It was just verdict. And I thought, oh my God, no. When I found out it was just a question. Does he? Yeah. Unreal. Just dropped off at school, right? DNA has done wonders for some of these older cases. You know, they didn't think they'd ever get caught. Well, just not the case. That's all you can ask for, right? Is to try and get closure for these families. Oh, yeah, it's heartbreaking. His father is awesome. Oh, does he cover it? Nice. Yeah, he did. He was working out there. Went and checked out his looked like a compressor setup out there. I don't know what they were dealing with, but I guess he went there, chit-chatted for about 2 seconds, left, and then went down this road, and you can turn left or right. Left would take him home, but for some reason he went right, and he was never seen again. They found his vehicle, and some of his clothes were folded up nice and neat beside it. It looks like it had rolled over. Some really sad cases. Dylan Rounds, I think, what's his face? I think he's going to trial. I should know his name, like, off the top of my head, but I don't right now. Over an argument, but this guy was, like, not nearly normal. Just not nearly normal. Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, and she's so strong, you know? When she was getting attacked there for a while, I felt so bad for them. It's like, oh my God. Dropped off at school. She conveniently left her phone home that day. Supposedly texts on her phone that she wanted to live in the woods. What? Yep, they sure did. Yeah, they're all mind-boggling, in my opinion, anyways. I made his first flyer and timeline for her. She's a very strong woman. She still messages from time to time. Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Yeah, he went out with his drone. Yeah, very nice. They need all the help they can get, you know. I would want, if anything happened to someone in my family, absolutely, I'd want everybody helping. You can't get enough people when a missing child or even a missing adult. I think the first case I really, really got into was the two girls from Moab, Kylan and Crystal, I think their names. It's been a while. Kylan and Crystal. That was the first one I really worked on. And then right after that actually happened, Gabby happened. In my opinion, the Soto thing is possibly another setup to cover a crime. Oh. Not two Sotos in the last while. That's very interesting. Wonder if that's a common Spanish name. Soto. Monkey. Yeah. Yeah. He was right in there too. Harmony, that was just crushing. Well, that SOB's gone. Put him into population, please. I don't know what CSAM is. Oh, yeah, and Summer Wells, like all of these babies. All of these babies. It's heartbreaking. James Brenner. That's his name. In association with Dylan Rounds. Now, when does he have? I don't know if it's a court date or a hearing, but it's coming up in a couple months. Let me see if I can find it. James Brenner, May 15th. He'll be in the 1st District Court in Brigham. May 15th. Yeah, when it comes to kids, ooh la la, that just gets everybody up in their feel bads and you want to do something. Okay, thanks for stopping by, Mom. Thanks for lurking. I don't even know what you do for a job. Isn't that something? I've never asked. There's been so much, Southern Gal, so much, you know? And the heartbreaking thing is a lot of these, the parents are involved. The new term, bad child stuff, yeah. Yeah. It's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. You know, in this particular case with Jennifer Dulos, it's pretty much said that her husband was the one that did this. And Folis, not long after they started looking into him, he deleted himself. So another chicken shite move. which left everything hanging on Michelle Troconis because she's the surviving person that is most likely involved with this. So they would get her anyways. Yeah. But you know what? They left 5 kids behind. You can't get past that. You know? They had a lot of kids that are parentless now. He made them, in my personal opinion, he made them orphans. And it's just absolutely disgusting. And when he was dropping these packages off all over the place, Michelle Troconis was in the vehicle with him. So to think that she didn't know, and I'm also, why would she go to Jennifer's house and start cleaning because her boyfriend asked her to? That doesn't even make sense. Wouldn't you be terrified of cleaning that house or doing whatever? And if you're so innocent, wouldn't you be worried about Jennifer walking in and finding you in her house? Yeah. Back then, yeah, that's what we called it, stranger danger. You can't even trust, it's true, you can't even trust some families. And it's heartbreaking to see all the mothers and women that are doing these attacks. Like, I don't know if it's because of the internet and we get a really good view of everything that's going on, or is it's just getting worse? I don't have the answer to that. I don't even know what to think of that. So I wonder, do you think that they are deliberating while they have their meals? Do you think that while they're having lunch? Oh, back in session.
Please be seated. There's no interpreter, but the court is just going to release the jury for lunch.
I explained that to my client. That's fine, Your Honor.
Oh, okay. Just lunch, releasing them for lunch. So there's that.
Will counsel stipulate, please?
Yes, Judge.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a good lunch.
Thank you.
Okay.
Stand in a recess.
Okay, then. I've wondered the same thing with the 24/7 news cycle. It's nonstop reporting. It is. And now that we have social media, there's always somebody with new information. It's an amazing thing. So they've gone for lunch. I'm going to trying to find something that might be interesting to stream in the meanwhile. Maybe this. Okay, so maybe while we're waiting, sounds great, Southern Girl. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that would have been a terrifying time. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's heartbreaking. I'm trying to find something that might be interesting to stream while we're waiting. I am looking. Let me do this. So I'm going to be doing, I'm hoping Elijah Vu an update later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put out a news update.
Right, I'd like to welcome everybody here to Two Rivers, Wisconsin tonight.
I
My name
haven't
is Ben
found
Howard,
those yet.
Manitowoc County Sheriff, spelled
I'll
my last
look.
name Hartwig. We serve as Public Information Officer for this press conference for the Two Rivers Police Department this evening. From the time he went missing, everyone has been working tirelessly to find 3-year-old Elijah. He is our number one focus, and finding him is the top priority of every single law enforcement officer, volunteer, member of this community, and his family. We have brought in some of the best people in the country over the past week to find him. We want to thank all of our law enforcement partners, specifically our local law enforcement, Division of Criminal Investigations, FBI, local volunteer fire departments, private search and rescue, community search groups, local businesses for food donations, and Wisconsin sheriffs for providing a multitude of resources to our search for Elijah. Tonight, you have a couple speakers before you. First up will be Chief Ben Meinert of the Two Rivers Police Department to provide an update on search efforts over the past week. We'll also have 2 members of Elijah's family who will also speak here tonight. Some things I want to let you folks know as well. When the family comes up here to speak, they're going to be stepping off to the side once they are completed. We respectfully request that you do not film them after they are done speaking. The chief will have about 5 minutes for questions after everyone is done speaking. He will not speak about the current situation involving Katrina Bauer and Jesse View. Most of that is already in the media, and they're currently in custody in the Manitowoc County Jail. When asking questions, we ask that you raise your hand and state your name and which news organization you are with.
Thank you all for being here this evening. My name is Ben Meinert, BenMein.
So this is the Elijah Vu, their latest police update.
and ERT. I'm the chief of the Two Rivers Police Department. A child missing for any amount of time is everyone's worst nightmare. That's why we're here today. Elijah, a 3-year-old boy, has been missing now for a week today. For the past week, we've utilized hundreds of resources, worked around the clock in our attempts to bring Elijah home. Right now, I'd like to bring everybody just up to speed with our search for Elijah and how that went. Elijah was reported a week ago today, like I said, around 11 a.m. in the 3900 block of Mishicot Road here in Two Rivers. Everyone searched for Elijah on that day. And I mean everyone. Our police department first responders responded out. It's not necessarily an unusual incident to have a missing child. Usually we find them right away. Nearly immediately, we realized that we needed more resources. Every officer, including myself, was out searching that day for Elijah. When we needed more help, we reached out to the fire department and our Department of Public Works. Soon after that, we got some information stating that Elijah may have gone missing at 8 a.m. When we received that information, my assistant chief, Melissa Wiesner, she's a former lead investigator and she's worked many child cases. I entrusted her and I knew she had the wherewithal to reach out immediately to places like A Child is Missing, our National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She put out numerous alerts, including missing and endangered alerts, Ring neighborhood alerts, and local emergency alerts. That included an Amber Alert. I know there's been some question about an Amber Alert on that day and why. This child was 3 years old and was reported missing on a cold winter temperature day with only a blanket and possibly light clothing. And we knew at that time, possibly 3 to 4 hours. I define that as endangered. I immediately reached out with the assistance of my staff to the Division of Criminal Investigation. This is not about me. This has always been about bringing Elijah home and quickly. They led that investigation into his whereabouts with the support of our FBI. We also utilized almost any boat, UTV, drone, canine, and even National Guard helicopters to search for Elijah. Unfortunately, Elijah wasn't found. Following that day, we had a press conference. I know people were frustrated with that. I too was frustrated with that. We had a lot of misinformation going around on Facebook, through social media, and just in general. We felt it necessary that we had to lay out factual information of the case and bring everybody up to date to that point. We also established a tip line and got that out to the public at that time. That has been beneficial and crucial to this investigation and search. Since the conference, I have personally provided media releases daily, if not multiple times during the day, to bring our public up to date and remain transparent. Those leads, those investigations, everything we've taken as tips have led to searching our neighborhoods, searching all our waterways, aerial and foot canvases, both urban and rural, throughout Manitowoc County and even beyond. We've searched Wisconsin landfills and quarries, and we've even had additional leads in Wisconsin Dells. In addition to all those search efforts, I am aware of other investigations taking place. I can confirm Elijah's mother, Katrina Bauer, is in jail on charges of child neglect and obstructing. Katrina's boyfriend, Jesse Bang, is in jail on charges of child neglect. And I do know that Elijah's father has also been incarcerated at Oshkosh Correctional Institute in unrelated matters since 2023. I also understand that the public would like more information on those first two individuals I mentioned. However, I'm unable to discuss those matters because it is an ongoing investigation and I don't want to jeopardize those cases. I want to thank the various local, state, federal agencies, as well as all our fire and EMS, and even those private resources that have helped along the way. Thank you to everyone in the community. They've provided food and drinks towards all these efforts. And thanks to all those private search efforts. On Saturday, we announced a Crime Stoppers Award of $1,000 for information leading to the location of Elijah, and have since provided other ways that people can donate here in the community or abroad. Currently, we have those established as coming
I am very worried about little Elijah.
to our customer service here at City Hall, our police department, and I'm also working on establishing an online route for people to do so. When that becomes available, I will reach out to everybody and let you know. Today, the FBI has now provided an additional reward up to $15,000 for information leading to the location and return of Elijah Vu, and or the arrest and conviction of any individual or individuals responsible or involved with his disappearance. We have posters here that state just that. In addition to all those search efforts, Elijah Vu's family has been coordinating their own search efforts throughout Manitowoc County. They're here today and they'd like to provide a statement. I'd like to bring those members of Elijah's family out to make those statements for you.
Heartbreaking.
On behalf of my family, we stand before you today with heavy hearts burdened by an unimaginable situation. The pain is indescribable, a torment no family or child should ever face. We cannot express the depth of our sorrow, nor the desperation that consumes us as each moment passes without news of Elijah's safety. To anyone who may have information about Elijah's whereabouts, we plead with you to please come forward. Your courage, your compassion, your willingness to speak up may hold the key to Elijah's safe return. Every piece of information will help bring us one step closer to bring Elijah back to our family where he belongs. To those who may have information, your assistance is just not a contribution, but a lifeline of hope.
Wow.
Elijah is a joyful and curious boy, full of life and love. He is a precious child who deserves every chance of happiness, and his absence is deeply felt by all who know and love him. Every day without him feels like a piece of our hearts is missing. We long to hear his laughter, to witness his curiosity, and to feel the warmth of his embrace. The emptiness left in his absence is a void that cannot be filled by anything else. Elijah, if you can hear us, know that you are deeply missed and loved, and we will not rest until you are safely back in our arms. Lastly, we want to express our deepest gratitude to law enforcement, government agency, and all involved in the search operation. The support of the community, the dedications of volunteers, the generosity of businesses, and the kindness showing through food and monetary donations, and so much more. We thank each and every one of you for your role in our search for Elijah. Please keep Elijah in your thoughts and prayers. And if you have any information, please come forward. We believe that with the help of the community, we can bring Elijah back home together. Thank you.
I talking English is not good. So, and I want everybody to be patient with me. So, and I just try that I can. So, right now, I would like to thank you for everybody to help my family to search for my grandson whole week to today. So, everybody know that we are really hurt. So, and I want to thank you for the officer, or all the fire department people, all the people living in two cities here, help to search for our grandson, our baby for 1 week right now. So, yeah, really thank you for everybody. So far right now, so I want everybody to continue to help us to look for my grandson. I want my grandson to be home with my family. So I want everybody to continue, don't stop, just searching for my baby Elijah. We want him to be safe and with my family, and we love my grandson. Thank you for
Ah, thanks, Mexi.
I'd like to thank the Boo family for being here.
Heart wrenching.
I have time for some questions, as the sheriff announced earlier. I won't be able to talk about the investigation of the case, but I will answer whatever questions I can.
Chief Evelyn Tessick from Fox 11. When was the last time someone other than Jesse Bang saw Elijah? What was the last time he was seen by someone other than someone who's arrested in the case?
Right, we've gotten that question a lot. I appreciate that question. What I will say is the reason that we've been seeking out to the public to request all the information that we are is because we are following up on every lead, tip, etc. And that is one of those things. You know, we want to know every time, anytime that Elijah was seen during this past week. So we will continue to follow up on all leads, any leads, and that's what's leading us into the locations that we've been.
Can you just, what was the most recent, I guess, before he disappeared?
I can't comment directly on the investigation, but I can tell you that we are following up on all those and we continue to ask for those.
Chief Bria Jones, Fox 6. Have you all
Hang on,
received,
just a second. Rita, go
Bria
ahead
Jones,
first.
Fox 6, Milwaukee, have you all received any information that indicates that Elijah is still alive, whether that be any surveillance or ring camera?
I'm not going to speculate on anything at this point, but what I will say is all our efforts are for bringing home Elijah safe. I believe that all our efforts thus far have done just that. We've reached out to hundreds and hundreds of resources over this week's time span, and they're all dedicated to bringing him home, and we'll continue to follow up on any leads to do so.
Chief Penalties, WISN 12. Do police believe Elijah left that residence on his own?
Again, I can't speculate. I will say that again, when we're talking about the Amber Alert that we put out, people wanted me to speculate on an abduction versus endangered. At this point, what I do know is a child was missing in cold temperatures, winter temperatures, in relatively little clothing and possibly a blanket. That's what we're searching for, and we'll continue to search for until I get some answers.
When you asked for surveillance video,
Yeah, he went missing. Little guy in a very, very cold situation, dressed in very little.
has there been any video that shows him on his own walking, anything like that?
I can't comment directly on that. What I will say is if that is in fact the case, I know that we have DCI agents, FBI agents, and local police doing just that because we're following up on all tips, any tips that relate to Elijah Boo and his return.
Chief, during your postal office NBC 26, you mentioned that there are search efforts in other parts of the state. Can you speak to what those have included? You mentioned here we've been searching landfills and waterways. You said that there have been searches going on in Wisconsin Dells. What have those looked like?
Well, I think what I can tell you is that you've seen and you guys have been broadcasting searches of landfills, searches of our waterways. We know that people have been out into the dells. Those are all things that we're following up on leads on. Any lead, we'll leave no rock unturned. We're going to follow up on those leads because ultimately our goal is, again, we want to bring Elijah home. So it doesn't matter how small that lead or tip may be, please bring that to us. Contact our tip line because we will get people out there to follow up on any lead whatsoever. I think we're going to go back over here because he was asking earlier.
You had spoke about misinformation before. How does misinformation spread, specifically in this case on Facebook, hinder this specific investigation and then just an investigation in general?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
The misinformation on Facebook, how does that hinder an investigation, this one specifically, and just in general?
That in particular doesn't necessarily hinder the investigation. What it does is it hinders all the efforts within the community. Because again, our primary efforts here are to bring Elijah home safe. And if the public's getting misinformation, that's going to lead them awry. I want them to know the facts. Our department takes pride in remaining transparent here in Two Rivers. And that's why I'm putting out all these news releases. That's why I'm having a news conference with you today, is because I want the public to know the facts, just the facts, and be up to date with those facts so they can continue their own searches. We're appreciative of those. I'm also appreciative of all the resources that we're focusing on throughout Manitowoc and beyond.
Chief, can you talk about the toll this has taken on your
I'm sorry,
department?
can we take another question over here? I'd like to spread this around.
Samantha Polly, WBAY News. Have you been able to find any items that Elijah was last wearing? We have video of people collecting evidence, potentially might be that dinosaur shoe that was missing.
Right. I can't comment on exactly what has been taken or would not be taken. I don't know the investigation issues there as far as how that plays out. What I do know is that we're continuing to search for any of those items that you're talking about. So basically, you guys have all seen the photo of Elijah. We've mentioned that he may have had dinosaur print shoes, a red plaid blanket, and in the clothing description. We are still looking for anybody that has tips on any of that stuff because we will follow up on it and we will try to figure out if it is related to Elijah Boo.
Where do you go from here? Is there still?
I'm sorry, can we go here? Last question.
Yeah, Chief Minor, Cecile from Local 5 News. A week after he's gone missing, how confident are you that Elijah is still alive?
Again, I'm not going to speculate. What I'm going to do is continue to search for Elijah Boo. We are doing everything in our efforts, believing that he is still out there. We will find him and we will bring him home. That's what we're searching for. And really, anybody in the community, anybody beyond, this is not related to just Two Rivers. This is abroad. So even outside of the Two Rivers community, I ask everybody in the state and beyond, really just start looking at your property. That's what you can do as a person, not right here physically. If you're looking for something to do, first check your property, then get involved in some of these other search efforts. That would help us a great deal. And again, reach out to that tip line, come back to us and provide us with any tips and we will follow up on them.
Do investigators have a reason to believe at
I'm
this
sorry.
point that there's anyone else involved in his disappearance?
I was just going to read. I'm sorry. That was the last question. I will just close with, I'd like to thank you, everyone, for being here today. You've heard pleas from the family now. We echo those same pleas. Since our number one, our priority has always been, I keep repeating it, to bring Elijah home. I'm asking everyone to continue in their searches, continue to contact our tip line, report anything at all that you feel may help us bring Elijah home. Everyone has been affected by this deal, this incident a great deal. This is a close-knit Two Rivers community. We're all devastated. We want answers. You want answers. I know efforts of our city staff, our citizens, and those beyond our city limits are going to continue to work together, and we'll bring Elijah home. Thank you.
Will a representative from the FBI be joining for any questions at all?
So that is the end of our press conference. Again, we're making that plea out to the public. Everybody's seen that kid's photo. It's pulling at everybody's heartstrings. We need to find them. Somebody knows something. Just want to remind everyone, tip line, state tip line, we've received hundreds and hundreds of tips that DCI agents are following up on, FBI agents are following up on, and local law enforcement. That tip line is 844-267-6648. And as a reminder again, as Chief reiterated, there's a $1,000 reward out from our local Crime Stoppers for information leading to the discovery of Elijah. And now the FBI has stepped up their ballgame, which we have posters set up by them, $15,000 reward for anyone that has information leading to his recovery and or arrest and prosecution of anyone responsible for his disappearance. Again, thank you all for helping share our message out today.
All righty then. I think what we'll do now is look at closing arguments in the Troconis. Well, may as well take another look at some more information on Michelle. I missed the closing arguments, so I'm hoping that this will catch us all up. They are on lunch right now, so now's a good time to get a refresher.
Will counsel stipulate, please?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. The court will explain how the proceeding will be scheduled today. Today is scheduled for closing arguments. Each side will have 1 hour to present their closing arguments. The state will have 1 hour. However, the state will have an opportunity to divide its argument into 2 parts. So the state will argue first, then the defense. The defense will have no second opportunity to argue, and the state may then close its argument. Are the parties ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Attorney Manning.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to start by saying thank you. Thank you for your time and attention over the past 6 weeks. I have an opportunity to speak to you now, and then the defense will go, and then Attorney McGinnis will speak with you one last time. Then our job is done, and yours begins. I'm going to start by talking about one thing that the evidence shows. Jennifer is dead. Let's be very clear. She was murdered on May 24th, 2019. There's blood spatter throughout the garage, throughout the undercarriage of 2 cars, footprints and swipes of blood. Her blood-soaked shirt and bra thrown out in the garbage on the streets of Albany Avenue, along with zip ties, sponges, and duct tape. Make no mistake, this was a deliberate, intentional murder. The evidence of Fotis Doulos taking his employee's car at 5:35 in the morning, driving down the parkway, secreting it at Waveney Park, and riding a bike to lay in wait for Jennifer. He did those acts because he planned to hurt, assault, to restrain her movements, and to kill her. Jennifer did not run away from her family, her friends, her 5 children, as the defense would like you to believe. She did not run away from her family, leaving her blood-soaked bra and shirt. She didn't hide in Waveney, head towards the train tracks. You heard the defense questions throughout the trial about that. Or try to make a call or get service with an old phone at Waveney Park in the afternoon on the 24th. The defense would have you believe she ran away from her kids, but she did not. Jennifer is dead, and Fotis and Michelle Troconis intended that to happen. They agreed to work together to make it happen, and unfortunately, they were successful in making it happen, but they got caught.
This trial is very simple. It's about a conspiracy and about a cover-up. It's about Michelle Troconis' actions and about how she and Fotis Doulos conspired together to murder the woman who was standing in their way. It's about the frustration of Fotis Doulos not seeing his kids for over a year and a half, about having, well, not seeing his kids and having a supervisor present for a year and a half. And every time those kids came around, Michelle Troconis had to leave her home. She had to take her daughter somewhere else. And we know she was sick of it. The frustration turned to anger and hatred. Listen to her own words in the interviews. How she describes Jennifer, someone she has never met. She describes her as manipulating, angry, toxic, and we all remember the comment to Pavel, that bitch should be buried next to the dog. As you heard Mike Mean and Mike Rose's testimony, each attorney tried to tell her there's a light at the end of the tunnel, because we know what she thought about the 2 years of the custody case, about the 2 years of court hearings. She described it as 2 years of torture, that it was a nightmare, and that she was going to leave. But that light at the end of the tunnel, I submit to you, wasn't another court hearing, because there was a court hearing and nothing changed. As of Wednesday, May 22nd, Fotis Doulos still had to have a supervisor present. Nothing changed. So they were going to make it change. After all, why would they be toasting at a dinner party on May 23rd? Why were they happy, excited, if nothing had changed? Because they were going to make it change the next morning. The defendant and Fotis Doulos conspired together to commit the crime of murder of Jennifer Doulos. That is count 1. The elements that comprise the charge of murder are an agreement, that the defendant specifically intended to agree with Fotis Doulos, and that agreement was to engage in conduct that constituted the crime of murder. That's intent to kill and do kill. That there was an overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. Why did we spend so much time on Fotis Doulos the past 6 weeks? Because that's an overt act. And there's an intent requirement. The defendant had the intent to commit the crime of murder. So how do you know somebody's intentions? How do you know their motive? You look at what they do. You infer their motive, their intentions from their behavior. Look at what she did. Look at what Michelle Troconis did. Her acts, her behavior during the time of the murder. Look at what she did, her acts and behavior before and after the murder. Look at when she did these acts. Look at what she said. Look at what she didn't say. And look at what she lied about. Now, the plan started on that Wednesday, May 22nd, when Fotis Doulos arrived an hour early. This is the person who Stefan Reich said had his own Fotis time. And then on Thursday, May 22nd, 2019, before the dinner party, remember when is important as well. Remember Pavel Gulmany's testimony that Fotis Doulos told him he had to drop the car off at 80 Mountain Spring Road, the Toyota Tacoma, right? This, I submit to you, was in order for him to be able to leave early the next morning and nobody would know. After drop off, Fotis goes to the grocery store to get more meat. Remember that testimony? But what does he do while he's there? He sets up the alibi call. His good friend, Andreas Tucciardis, his good friend who coincidentally does not cooperate with the police. Why do you think he doesn't cooperate? Look at the timing, the text message that was set up. It was done at 5:53 after he had already moved the car. And it says, call me. The defendant and Fotis Doulos have their dinner party. Hutch Haynes, his wife, the Reichs, there's a celebration, a toast to the light at the end of the tunnel, but they had already moved the car and they had already set up the text message. So what were they toasting? Well, they were toasting what they were going to do the next morning. After the Reichs left and the Haynes left, what happened? the defendant and Fotis Dulos solidified their plan. At around 10 o'clock in the evening, they texted again. Fotis Dulos texted his good friend from Greece, specifying the time, 3:30 yours, which is 8:30 in Connecticut time. Just enough time for Michelle Troconis to drop her daughter off at school and return to Fort Jefferson Crossing to answer the call the next day. A call she knew what time it was coming. Is it just coincidence that she happened to be in the office at the exact moment that Fotis Dulos told Andreas Tuchiardis to call him? Or is it reasonable, based on the motive and based on the evidence, that she knew what time that call was coming and she made sure to answer it? Now, early the next morning at 5:35 in the Fotis Dulos leaves 80 Mountain Road and he drives to New Canaan in his employee's Toyota Tacoma with a bike in the back of the truck. And he leaves his phone with Michelle Troconis. This is all evidence of Fotis Dulos and the defendant's intent to murder Jennifer. And that murder is the overt act in furtherance of the conspiracy. But Fotis Dulos needed help to commit that murder. He needed an alibi. He needed the defendant. So what is the defendant doing while Fotis Dulos is driving down to New Canaan? When he's southbound on the Merritt Parkway at the Fairfield Rest Area at 6:36, or at the New Canaan Rest Area at 7:03? What about when he's riding a bike up Weed Street, the direct path between Waveney Park and 69 Wells Lane? Or at 7:57 when the school bus camera captures that Toyota Tacoma secreted in a cutout across from Waveney Park? Or at 8:05 when Jennifer returns home after dropping her children off, the last time they will see their mother? What is the defendant doing while Jennifer is being assaulted and killed in the garage of 69 Wells Lane? Fotis Dulos' overt act. Remember, Michelle Troconis doesn't have to be at 69 Wells Lane. She is not charged with the murder. She is charged with conspiracy to commit the murder. It's Fotis Dulos who committed that overt act. Remember Mark Davison's testimony? There were a minimum of 2 impacts. This wasn't a fall where she hit her head. You saw the blood splatter on the car, on the undercarriage of 2 cars, the garage floor, the garbage cans. You can make the reasonable inference that this was an anger-driven assault on Jennifer and she died as a result. Then there's the cover-up, the cleanup in the garage, the swipes, the paper towels that were missing that Lauren Almeida put out the day before, the bucket that was missing from the garage. And don't forget the DNA on the faucet. Recall Matt Riley and Kristen Medell's testimony. Matt Riley took a swab off of that faucet because there was a blood-like stain that in his training experience he determined was evidentiary, and he took a swab from that blood-like stain, and it contained Jennifer and Fotis Dulos' DNA 4.3 billion times more likely to occur. Recall Kristen Medell's testimony on that. Did that blood-like stain, well, let me ask you this. Did that blood-like stain with Fotis Dulos' DNA come from a cake 2 days before? Or is it more likely that he missed the spot? After he is done cleaning up the garage at 10:25, Fotis drives the Suburban away from 69 Wells Lane. At 10:30, it's in the same direction en route back to Waveney Park, where it is later found by New Canaan PD with the battery dead and the car in reverse. Drives back the Merritt Parkway. Remember Trooper LeBeau's testimony? You make the call. It's your opinion, your memory that controls. But I submit to you, this is a bike in the back of his truck. And don't forget the Tour de France imprint on the tape that was found out of Hartford. During this entire morning, Fotis Dulos doesn't have his phone on him. Why wouldn't he want his phone on him? Well, there's two reasons. One, he doesn't want his location tracked. I think that's a reasonable inference you can make. But two, he needs somebody to manipulate it. He needs somebody to manipulate it at 4 Jefferson Crossing so it looks like he is home. So it looks like he's taking a shower. So it looks like he is in the office. So it looks like he is answering calls. We all know who that someone is. Michelle Troconis. Look at all the text messages that were not answered that morning and all the phone calls that were not answered except for one, the planned one. Make no mistake, she knew exactly what she was doing when she answered that phone. How do you know? It was planned, the timing, but also she doesn't talk about the call at all in her first 2 interviews. After all, the call is not on her alibi script, and make no mistake, we call them timelines, but they are alibi scripts. That call is not on her alibi script. A lot of other calls are, but conveniently that one's not on it. It's on Fotis's. After all, it's supposed to be his alibi. Are all those things consistent with the defense's theory that she didn't know anything? I submit to you, they're consistent with one thing, her guilt. By the way, at 10:25, when Fotis Doulos is driving Jennifer's Suburban to Waveney Park, Fotis's good friend, the one who called at 8:26,
choices. A, you can spend the rest of your life with your wife. B,
why is he sending that meme at that time? Coincidence? Or does that just show the intent behind that 8:26 phone call? User manipulation. Mike Clark testified that when somebody manipulates the phone, they turn it, they unlock it, it gets recorded. Now, the only person who could have reasonably manipulated Fotis Doulos' phone that morning is Michelle Troconis. There's some evidence of Kent Mawhinney. He came to the office at 7:21 and 8:41. But the phone was manipulated before 7:21, before he arrives, and it was manipulated after he leaves. The defendant is the only person who could have reasonably manipulated that phone, and the only person who had reason to manipulate that phone. At 6:44, the phone is unlocked. 6:45, 6:46, it's turned. Orientation change, 7:01. 7:01, the phone is unlocked again. 8:07, unlocked again. All this while he is en route in the Toyota Tacoma and on the bike and in the garage. At 8:26, she answers the call and puts it on speakerphone. At 8:31, it's unlocked again. And at 9:03, after Kent Mawhinney leaves, it's unlocked again. This is the conspiracy. Now I want to talk about the cover-up. There are multiple charges, but as I said, this is simple. It is all connected because the acts and behaviors of what she did, what Michelle Troconis does before, during, after, and the statements, the omissions, and the lies are all what we call circumstantial evidence. And they're all circumstantial evidence for each and every charge. After all, you don't shake hands and plan to murder somebody at a dinner party. Look at the cleanup between 12:22, when the Toyota Tacoma returns, and 7:10 prior to driving down Albany Avenue. These acts go hand in hand with counts 1, 2, and 3. The Toyota returns at 12:22. And then the defendant and Fotis Doulos both go to 80 Mountain Spring at approximately 1:35. And from 1:35 until 4:58, when Pavel Gomini shows up, Fotis Doulos never leaves 80 Mountain Spring Road. For 3.5 hours, he never leaves an empty property. It is reasonable to assume that he needs that amount of time to clean the Tacoma and to prepare the garbage bags for Hartford. Michelle Troconis admits in her own interviews that she went back and forth to 80 Mountain before Jefferson Crossing that afternoon, but she says she only did it 2 to 3 times, depending on which interview you watch. But look at her interviews. She omits and lies about things only when they're incriminating. There were 5 trips that day, not 2 to 3. Trip 1, 136 to 141. She stays at 80 Mountain Spring Road for 5 minutes before returning to 4 Jefferson Crossing. Trip number 2, 201 to 224. She returns to 80 Mountain Road, stays for 23 minutes before returning to 4 Jefferson Crossing. And trip number 3, at 355 to 404, she stays for 9 minutes. What is she doing between trips 2 and 3? Between 224 and 355 when she is alone at 4 Jefferson Crossing? She's burning something. Then she's not burning something. And then she's burning something again. Remember, there were 3 separate fire events, ladies and gentlemen. This is 2 of them. And she is alone at 4 Jefferson Crossing while the fire is going on. How do we know that she's alone? We don't see any other cars leave 80 Mountain Spring Road. Her own admission in her interviews for driving the Jeep in the Suburban, and Photostoulos' phone location. Mike Clark's testimony, it stays at 80 Mountain Spring Road during the time of those fires. Now we go to trip 4. Michelle Troconis goes back to 80 Mountain Road. She stays for 35 minutes between 4:23 and 4:58 when Pavel Womeny shows up. Then Pavel Womeny leaves, Michelle Troconis backs out of the driveway, and Photostoulos leave. They all leave together. And at this moment, she takes the keys to the Toyota Tacoma to prevent Pavel from taking the car for the weekend. After all, they need more time. They haven't gone to the car wash yet. Look at her alibi script. Look at her interviews about what she says and doesn't say about the keys. But Pavel's insistent. He wants his truck for the weekend. He wants that motorbike. So she has to return the keys. And she stays for 4 minutes to return the keys. And she goes back to 4 Jefferson Crossing, and we have a fire event. These acts, including her statements, are all circumstantial evidence of her agreement to conspire with Photostoulos to murder Jennifer and to tamper with evidence and being an accessory to tampering with evidence. When I talk about tampering, I'm going to combine counts 2, 3, 4, and 5. Counts 2 and 3 have to do with May 24th and the events at Albany Avenue, and counts 4 and 5 have to do with the Tacoma and Russell Speeders on May 29th. The elements the state has to prove for conspiracy to commit tampering is the agreement with Photostoulos to commit the crime of tampering. Tampering itself is knowing a criminal investigation is pending, and I submit to you that it is a reasonable inference a criminal investigation is going to commence when you commit a crime like murder. And that evidence was tampered with. In counts 2 and 3, that is very simple. That's all the items that came out of Albany Avenue. Jennifer's bra, her shirt, the zip ties. And for counts 3, 4, and 5, that's the Toyota Tacoma. There has to be an intent to deceive, and there is a clear intent to deceive, to destroy evidence when you throw it in a garbage can on Albany Avenue, or when you take the vehicle you use to commit the crime to a car wash and ask for 2 extra details on the interior. The overact, well, here, straightforward, the defendant traveled with Photostoulos to Hartford to dispose of the evidence, and you specifically intend to enter that agreement. and commit the crime of tampering. She's also charged with being an accessory to tampering. Accessory requires simply that you intentionally aid Fotis Dulos in tampering with the evidence. This is both for Hartford and Russell Speeders. And what did the defendant and Fotis Dulos do next? It's all very clear. It's on video as C4. Please watch the C4 videos again. I'm not giving enough time to show them to you, but I am going to draw your attention to one of those videos, specifically the Albany and Blue Hills camera. It's also on Adams Street at around 7:48. When you watch this video, notice the simultaneous actions of Fotis Dulos and Michelle Troconis. The coordination that after they have been sitting there a while, they open the door at the exact same time, conveniently at the right time to block the view from the tan car waiting to exit the parking lot. After all, we know what's in that sewer. It's the license plates, the altered license plates. And it is reasonable to assume that the defendant, Michelle Troconis, did not want anyone from that tan car to see what they were doing. They didn't want a witness. What does she do next? At this exact moment, she opens her door. Well, she says it in her interviews. She wipes gum off of her hands onto the city sidewalk. Is that reasonable? Or is it more reasonable that they didn't want anybody in the tan car to see Fotis Dulos dispose of those altered license plates in the sewer? Coordination, conspiracy, and intentionally aiding. After all, who uses the city sidewalk to wipe their hands? As for the evidence that was tampered with, you have them. The license plate, the bloody ponchos, the gloves, the tool, the bloody towel, the mop, the zip ties that were cut, and her shirt and her bra sliced down the middle. Don't forget the bag that contained the defendant's DNA on the opening. That bag also contained blood-like stains and duct tape. And that duct tape had Jennifer's DNA on the sticky side of it. The defendant's DNA on that bag shows her knowledge and her lies. It proves she's an accessory to tampering. Now, the defendant would have you believe she knew nothing of Fotis Dulos' acts, but look at the context. The police knock on her door that night, May 24th, 2019, when her daughter is not home. The police want to talk about her boyfriend being missing, and her boyfriend's wife being missing. And they are in the middle of a contentious divorce and custody battle. If she didn't know anything, why would she hide in the bedroom? She wasn't hiding from the police that night. She was hiding from the truth. Is it more reasonable the next day at the hairdresser when she was happy and excited, that she was happy and excited because she thought for a brief moment they got away with it? Or is it, well, then what happens? Fotis Dulos' phone gets taken. He can't get the kids that weekend. The plans they set in place, they start to crumble. She knew what was going on, ladies and gentlemen. Do you remember her joke in the interview? She made a joke about the fact that she said maybe she can have sex with Fotis while she's in jail, or he's in jail. Watch the interviews again. Now, this is all before May 29th, before Russell Speeders. And this is the last count hindering prosecution, where the state must prove, and we have proven, that she provided assistance to Fotis Dulos with intent to prevent, hinder, and delay and discover the crime charge of murder. She assisted by providing transportation to him and other means. This is all about the Toyota Tacoma. Remember Pavel's testimony, how he hasn't spoken to Jennifer Dulos in years, and yet her DNA was on a blood-like stain that Matt Riley found on the seats. And remember Kristen Medell's testimony on how easily DNA can be destroyed with just wiping, let alone the cleaning solutions that they use at Russell Speeders. The defendant provided assistance and aid to Fotis Doulos on May 29, 2019. She followed him to Russell Speeders that day in her rented Yukon. Fotis Doulos put down her phone number and they left the car wash together. The defendant got the call that the car was ready and she went back and went to the bank with him to pick up cash to pay for it. And she was with him to pick up the car. The evidence proves beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant intended to end her and Fotis Doulos' 2 years of torture by murdering Jennifer Farber Doulos. She acted as his alibi during the murder. She conspired to tamper with the physical evidence of the murder, intentionally aided in covering it up at 80 Mountain Spring Road, at Albany Avenue in Hartford, and at Russell Speeders in Avon. The evidence shows the defendant is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt of each and every count. Thank you.
That was short and sweet. Good Lord.
Is that sweet? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is the one and only time, except during voir dire, that I get to speak to you during this trial. It's been a long trial, and I will just echo what Ms. Manning said about your dedication and your attention to this case over what has been, at least in recent years, one of the longer trials that has taken place in the state of Connecticut. I am going to refer to notes while I'm talking to you. Usually I just try to talk and I have pointers, but because there are so many things that happened in this case, there's just been so much over the course of the last 6.5 weeks, I may refer more to the notes than I normally would, and I apologize in advance if it looks like I'm reading from a paper rather than just talking to you. What I want to start off by pointing out is that what really happened on May 24th, 2019, because whatever was going on that day, whatever Fotis Doulos' role was in the disappearance, and I'll say the likely death of Jennifer Doulos, Michelle Troconis did not know. She did not know that Fotis Doulos planned to harm her. Everything suggested that things were going well, and it was to the contrary. In fact, she didn't know that Fotis was capable of doing something like this. A man who was dedicated to his 5 children, had been in court for years trying to get custody back. The state has made what I would suggest are unfounded and unfair assumptions and has speculated that Michelle Troconis had to know what was going on, that she was, because she was romantically linked with Fotis, that she was somehow involved in this nefarious, murderous plot. But that's not reality. That's more like one of these cable TV movies scripted movies. It's not based on the facts that you heard during this trial. It is, and I will say this multiple times, speculation. It's conjecture. It's guesswork, which is not the standard of evidence in a criminal case here. We also concede that something bad did in fact happen at 69 Wells Lane in New Canaan that morning. It's clear, and we will also concede that Fotis Doulos is ultimately responsible for what happened to Jennifer Doulos, whether he did it himself or he had a compatriot who was involved in it down there, because we know someone else was down at 16, or at least down in New Canaan that day, and we know that wasn't Michelle Troconis. The state has not proven where Fotis Doulos was that morning. There's some suggestions. We see the vehicles driving. There is a tiny amount, I emphasize a tiny amount of DNA found on a faucet inside the home, which I'll talk about in a minute. But whether or not Fotis was in Farmington, whether it is in New Canaan or somewhere in between, it is conjecture as to where he actually was and what he personally did with his own hands. Now, we're looking at evidence that's been going on for 5 years, collection of evidence, and taking statements as recently as last month from Mr. Gumieni, new statements from Mr. Gumieni. But there's been forensics, there was surveillance cameras, there were multiple interviews, there were family court pleadings, there were the interrogations. You heard 8-9 hours of interrogations of Michelle Troconis. Even in hindsight, even now, major questions remain about what happened. And it's still unclear. It's still unclear what happened. And unfortunately, this trial will not solve that puzzle. It will remain a mystery, an unfinished puzzle. But again, this is not Fotis Doulos' trial. This is Michelle Troconis' trial. And because it's Michelle Troconis' trial, you must find beyond a reasonable doubt that Michelle conspired with Fotis Doulos, not just to cause harm to Jennifer Doulos, but to murder her. That was the plot, that was the intent of Michelle Troconis on or before May 24th, 2019. Then you have to find beyond a reasonable doubt various elements that Michelle was part of a plot to get rid of evidence, some microscopic, some in opaque garbage bags, but that she knew what was in it, knew its purpose, and what she did was the same exact intent as whatever Fotis Doulos had planned. But again, part of what you have to prove here, and what the state has to prove, what you have to find, is that Fotis Doulos murdered his wife. The criminal information, which you will have, states specifically that Fotis Doulos assaulted his wife and restrained her and intended to kill her. Again, there's no evidence of that. It's speculation as to who actually did that, as to any of that, for that matter. No matter how you view this evidence, even in hindsight, 5 years later, there is nothing to suggest that Michelle had any clue about what was going to happen in New Canaan on May 24th, 2019. More importantly, there's nothing to suggest that Michelle would even think that Fotis was capable of doing anything like that. Again, Michelle simply did not know. Now, we can talk about what Michelle did know about Fotis Doulos. We can talk about his life before June 2nd, 2019, when Michelle was, after her arrest and being brought before the police and being interrogated for that first time. This is the Fotis Doulos that Michelle had met down in Miami. It was very different than the one that the police were describing to him and what the police had learned from Jennifer's family and what they knew about Fotis Doulos. Michelle met Fotis in 2016 at the Miami Water Skiing Club. Both were members, both were competitive water skiers. They both had children about the same age, and the children became friends. You heard from Lauren Almeida about that. Fotis introduced the babysitter. He introduced his children. And at some point, Michelle fell in love with that man. He was an outgoing, fun-loving father, successful businessman with a high-end construction of homes business, a competitive athlete with similar interests to her. Obviously more similar interests than has been testified to that Jennifer Dulos had with Fotis. But she was also told, and you heard this from many people, that they were working towards an amicable, friendly divorce, that everything was going to be fine, there was going to be legal separation and an amicable divorce in custody. In September of 2017, Michelle did move to Connecticut with her young daughter. She enrolled her daughter in local schools, made her own friends, engaged in her passion for water skiing. She traveled. She helped work on her daughter's athletic interests and her sports training. But more importantly, she also had her own business. You heard from several people she had an import rug business that she was selling in local Farmington Valley stores and to individuals. But Fotis always showed the side of him that he wanted her and others to see. He hid things from Michelle, just like he did from his friends and from his employees, including Pavel Gumieni. He did that for years. Even Lauren Almeida, who used to work for him, who considered him a mentor, didn't believe it when Jennifer suggested her that Fotis was having an affair. He was good at hiding what he was really up to. Now, in 2019, and we just heard that from the prosecution, there were some strains in the relationship between Fotis and Michelle. Just like Fotis, you heard, was lying to her, he was storing other women's phone numbers in his phone. He'd put some of those names in the Greek language, which she didn't understand. And she was upset, thinking that he was communicating with other women, but using men's names to hide that fact. They were written in Greek, and Michelle didn't know any Greek. She had already talked about moving to Colorado with her daughter after the end of the school year. And it also looked like at the end of April, the custody fight was about to end. There was a favorable report. Everyone said that report was favorable to Fotis Dulos and that he was going to look forward to spending the whole summer with his children. That was discussed not just with the lawyers who talked to Michelle, but it was also discussed with his friends and those that knew him well. They were, quote, moving in a positive direction, unquote, starting at the end of April. And according to Michelle's interviews with the police, she also thought everything seemed good by now. Everything was consistent with the testimony by friends, co-workers, his employees and former employees, and especially the lawyers that you heard from, Mr. Meehan and Mr. Rose. This nefarious plot under those circumstances makes no sense. Why then? Why at that moment is he going to then plot with his girlfriend to kill Jennifer? Even in hindsight, that doesn't make sense to any of the people that you heard from. None of them. Let's talk a little bit about Pavel Gumieni. His name came up, but very briefly in the state's argument. Mr. Gumieni saw Fotis every day practically during the week for years, for a decade even before he worked for him. He came into that business, worked with him, talked to him, knew and liked Jennifer Dulos, helped her move down to Fairfield County without Fotis knowing it. He didn't want to upset Fotis, so he was actually helping Jennifer move her belongings out of the house without tipping off Fotis that she was doing that. But what else do we know about Pavel? Even after Fotis Dulos was seen or believed to be cleaning his Tacoma, He had told Michelle that Pavel intended to sell it, and he told Pavel to find a replacement for it. He also told him to replace the car seats in that Tacoma. Remember, Pavel Gumieni was combing junkyards up in the between Waterbury and Hartford, looking for new seats. Fotis told him to call seats, if he called him on the phone, hardware. What is this, some kind of spy code? Why would Fotis tell Mr. Gumieni to not refer to it as?
I honestly did not know that he had a new girlfriend by the time this all kind of came to a head. I didn't know that. Interesting, though.
Seats, but hardware. Who would be present at that point? Michelle or perhaps other employees? He didn't want them to know. Then you saw the picture. He took the Porsche seats, took them out of the Porsche, put them in his vehicle, but in such a haphazard way. You saw that picture. They're being propped up with a bucket. He's driving now his Tacoma with a bucket holding a sports car seat in his pickup truck. Despite all these red flags, doing all these things, after Fotis told him he wants them to do this because there may be some of DNA of Jennifer in his vehicle. He does it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Even with full immunity from prosecution, which the judge will talk to you about, he still insisted to you in questioning that he did not believe that Fotis would harm Jennifer. Even after, as long as a reasonable explanation was given to him as to why he should do these things, he believed that. And he went along with it. He knew more than Michelle did, and he still did his bidding. There are those people that came to the house the night before, May 23rd, 2019. You have Stefan and Beth Wright, you have Hutch Haynes. All of them talked about what a wonderful evening, happy evening it was. They talked about there was no bad mouthing of Jennifer at all. If you remember, Beth Wright, who is a domestic violence counselor, that's part of her job. It's one of her jobs. Went so far as to say that everything seemed to make sense. Everything was working out. They basically toasted the happy outcome that it was going to end very soon in a happy way. Hutch Haynes, who had known Fotis for years, didn't think he could do anything like this. You heard that from him. That was even during the investigation, even after the police came and they had divers going through his water skiing pond. I already talked about what the babysitter, Miss Almeida, said. She thought Michelle was nice. And there are also, even through her no prior examples or incidents of violence. There was a discussion about him wanting her to sign a piece of paper, yelling at her, but there was never any violence in that relationship. The professionals, Attorney Meehan, the guardian ad litem, the social worker, Sidney Streeter, they both were involved. Meehan was involved for years. He also said everything seemed to be working out. It was a favorable report. And Ms. Streeter, a professional whose job it was to keep an eye on Fotis Dulos, described how amicable and friendly that was on the Wednesday, I guess naming day for one of the daughters, where they were talking together, they were being civil. He gave her a chocolate bunny and she took it from him and ate it. He handed her a cake. She took that and brought it into the house. She invited him to come out and sit out on the picnic table and have dinner with the children since the park closed early. You heard Attorney Mike Rose, the divorce lawyer for Fotis Dulos, say that Fotis didn't want to talk about the divorce case in front of Michelle. Said, please call me later. I'm sorry, I can't talk while Michelle is around. But he's the one who said, There was now light at the end of the tunnel. Everything was going to be fine. Things were looking good. Why at that moment would Michelle agree to risk her life, risk her daughter's entire family life to at that point say, I think we now want to get rid of Jennifer Dulos? It doesn't make sense. It's pure speculation. You heard a little bit about Anna Curry during the questioning of Mr. Kimball. You remember Anna Curry was the woman who moved in with Fotis Dulos right after she had moved out and had been arrested. Her picture was shown to Michelle, and you remember, I can't remember if it was Clabby or Kimball referred to her as Michelle 2.0. Remember that? That was a woman who had moved in with this man within a month or so of him being accused of destroying evidence on Albany Avenue with bloody shirt and a bloody bra connected to Jennifer Dulos at that point. Then you heard, remember, from Petu Duperon. Clara, she was a friend of both Michelle and Fotis, had been to the house many, many times. She never suspected that Fotis would harm Jennifer, not even after June 1st, 2019, when she never spoke to him again. She did speak to Michelle. She continues to speak to Michelle. She's here in the courtroom even today. Let me just talk in general about something that I think that maybe we can all agree on. The people that we trust and believe in are our friends and loved ones. And people usually are who they say they are. We don't immediately go and distrust them, even when certain red flags arise. Even if you think they're doing something, I wonder why he's doing that. You don't suddenly think this is a bad person. Our default in our human interrelations is to believe people. We all do that. We also never think that we're going to be manipulated by someone we care about. This could never happen to us. But with the benefit of hindsight, we can't even believe that we were fooled and tricked in that way. I believe I asked most of you during voir dire if you think that you need to share everything that you're thinking and doing with your significant other or spouse. All of you at least acknowledge that they should do that, but I also recall saying that you don't believe that they always do. But that doesn't mean we stop caring about that person. It doesn't mean we immediately decide they're what? About to murder somebody? That's not how we think. We also know that Fotis Dulos committed suicide in 2020. You have that death certificate in evidence. You can see he died from the complications of acute carbon monoxide intoxication. It specifically says intentional inhalation of motor vehicle exhaust inside a garage, and you'll see the yellow box, suicide is checked. Whatever Fotis Dulos did, it was not for or because of Michelle, and it was not with her. Fotis put up a facade until his last poisoned breath, and he died without ever acknowledging his actions or admitting his role even to his own children. He never gave answers, and he can't be held to answer. Everyone wants closure. Michelle is not the remaining half of a scheming plot. She was never part of the equation. That is pure speculation. She didn't know. Most of this trial has been about Fotis Dulos in absentia. You heard about the fingerprints. You heard about the blood. You heard about the DNA. You also remember that the biologist Anna Valonis said that these KM tests, these so-called screening tests, they only suggest the possibility of human blood. It's a place for them to swab. And the suggestion by the prosecutor that, well, there's some DNA on the faucet, and we should assume that means that Fotis Dulos was in the house. Remember, it was a mixture between Jennifer Dulos' DNA and Fotis Dulos' DNA. It's the only place in the house. Why would his DNA be there other than She took chocolate from him. She took a cake from him. The children all had touched his hair. They were playing basketball with him. And where else would they wash their hands before dinner but on the faucet in the kitchen? So a small amount of DNA appeared there, and it just stays there. It doesn't go away. In the same way, you heard Mr. Gumieni admit that Jennifer Dulas had been in his truck before. You want to know how a tiny bit of DNA gets, remember, on the underside, not on the seat, but on the underside? It's because someone had sat in that seat. It was not blood. Those were sponge rubber seats. The state is asking you to speculate that there is evidence where there is none, but the absence of evidence is not evidence. You can't infer facts in a vacuum. 0 times 0 equals 0, basic math. You wonder how much blood would have been there if only Fotis had not taken out a car mat that was never found in the Suburban. How much blood would have been in the Tacoma if it hadn't been brought to the car wash? How come there was nothing in the Cherokee that maybe Michelle was driving and not Mr. Gumieni?
Oh, my word.
There was nothing in the Cherokee because there was nothing to find in the Cherokee. What might have been discovered at 80 Mountain Spring Road if Michelle and Fotis hadn't done a little cleanup for a showing that we have proven happened the next day of that house? Let's speculate. The state would have you speculate about a smoke coming out of a chimney in the fireplace in the house. Unfortunately, it's in black and white. The original is in color, but that's the best we could do for today. You were shown a couple of videos. 2 of them are within minutes of each other. Remember, that's a motion-activated camera. So to suggest there were just 2 times when there's smoke coming out of that chimney is unreasonable. It's unfair, and it's misleading in many ways. Police continue to investigate. They continue to assemble evidence. They went to Albany Avenue after learning that Mr. Dulos's phone had pinged on a cell tower on Albany Avenue, and they got the C4 cameras that showed him, not Michelle, putting garbage in black opaque bags in various receptacles. 3 receptacles, not 6, not 30. Now, the state is asking you to evaluate in hindsight that she must have known what was in those bags. They were on Albany Avenue. She had told her they were going to Starbucks, but they went past Starbucks. Now, I believe the maps show it's about 1.5 miles past where the Starbucks is. But he told her, well, I just have to get rid of a few bags here. She told the police that he had done that before. Contractors, think about it. When you build a spec house, you heard that from Mr. Wright. You build this house, you hope to sell it. It's not for a particular customer. But if you have to buy another dumpster, if you have to rent another dumpster, that comes right off the profit, comes right off the bottom line. So how many builders drive around and go to public locations and dump trash in receptacles that aren't their own? Especially since Friday morning, you already now know, was garbage pickup in that part of Farmington. But what do we know today that we didn't know then? We know that Jennifer Dulos missed her appointment with a Dr. Geronimus that morning. We know that she was supposed to be in New York, that her children and the babysitter had already gone to New York. The call came in at 7 p.m. to the New Canaan Police Department that Jennifer was missing. They went to the house. They noticed something that looked like blood, and that's when the investigation began. Teams of investigators from multiple agencies took part in this investigation. They went through every point and every part of the garage at 69 Wells Lane. They found obvious signs of violence, and they were working against the clock. Now at 8 p.m. approximately, they found the Suburban parked on the side of Waveney Park. It had not been seen since 10:30 in the morning. Where was it? You saw school bus videos from Lapham Road. You don't see any time when that Suburban is sitting there or parked there. Now, law enforcement learned about Fotis from Jennifer's friends, that he was manipulative, that he was volatile. He had a years-long custody battle going on. Michelle, yes, was in the Raptor when he dumped those garbage bags on Albany Avenue. And the police thought Michelle knew what was in them, but she didn't know. And there's no way you could see without X-ray vision what was in those bags. Incidentally, they found nothing at 80 Mountain Spring Road. There was a coffee cup that was noted in the recycling bin in the garage. The one thing that might have had evidentiary value, and remember what Detective Sergeant Pearson said, they found nothing of evidentiary value. She noted the coffee cup, but she didn't take it. Would that not at least be consistent with what Michelle said? Fotis told her he dropped coffee, spilled coffee, and that's why he was cleaning up and he needed some paper towels. But see, that doesn't fit the prosecution's narrative, so they didn't even collect that as evidence. So Michelle was handcuffed. She was taken down to New Canaan, 80 miles away from where she was after she gets kicked out of her house. The police accused Fotis at that time of doing something that she thought was impossible. And they accused her of helping him without proof. They repeatedly said that to her. You saw she was tired. She'd been arrested in the middle of the night. She was cold. She had a blanket wrapped around her during the questioning. But Michelle, they told her that Michelle didn't know the real Fotis. They knew things about him that she did not, and that he used her. They told her she needed to tell them multiple times where Fotis, where Jennifer was. They threatened her. They scared her. They lied to her. All permitted under Connecticut law. They told her she was going to lose her daughter, her family, that if they found the body, she was going to get charged with accessory to murder. She kept saying she didn't know, a dozen times, maybe more, but they didn't let up. There's no evidence to suggest that Michelle, who had traveled the world, had competed nationally and internationally in sports, and suddenly wanted to be a full-time mom to an additional 5 children who had just lost their mom. She had her own family. She explained that to them. She had a large and loving family. She had her good relationship with her daughter. Even the police admit in those interrogations that she was on the phone and listening. There was family discussions going on with her mom, with her sisters, all while supposedly helping dispose of evidence of a murder. Michelle wasn't trying to replace anybody. She didn't want to be these children's mother. She loved these children. She liked these children, but that's a far cry from wanting to replace their mother. Yes, there was a toxic custody battle, but she thought things were working out in her favor. I'm going to talk about the timeline very briefly. You'll remember that Jacob Pytranker is the one who suggested to Fotis in Michelle's presence that he write a timeline. That's when she found out that he'd even been at Jennifer's house that previous Wednesday, a couple of days earlier. She was mad that he had lied to her about that. She was mad that he didn't tell her that he had been to that house. And she was angry because she thought everything was working out through the court process. But he was lying to her even about that. If you give any credit at all to Mr. Gumieni's revelation that Michelle made a disparaging comment about Jennifer about a month earlier, I remind you that this is a man who was given written immunity and he was given verbal immunity before that. He was a non-citizen, told that he could be deported. There is one takeaway, however, from what he said. If you'll recall, what he said was that when they were bringing wood up to the house, she was upset that her 12-year-old daughter's picture was being plastered all over the internet in connection with the disappearance of Jennifer Dulos. And what did she say? According to Mr. Gumieni, that when she shows up, I'm going to kill her. And you remember, Gumieni himself said that's what he thought too, that she was going to show up. So if she's already deceased, why would anybody say that? Why would Gumieni make that his response? Listen to the judge when he talks about demeanor. There's a special instruction to be very careful before you consider the credibility of someone in his position. Both his timing and the circumstances of that statement 5 years later that suddenly became a revelation should give you some hesitation. Why? We put on Detective Allegro last week. You remember what he said, that he's the one who suggested, is it possible to Pavel? He said, is it possible that Fotis used that kind of language in describing his wife? This is in the July 8-hour interview, if you recall. He used those exact words, effing bitch, okay? Pavel said, nope, never heard that. But that would have been the time. But I remember Michelle Troconis saying something like that. That didn't even jog his memory about that. So I suggest to you that that part, the part about that he referred to her in derogatory terms, was made up after he got a signed immunity agreement to sort of ingratiate himself. Because remember, it's not just that he's been given immunity for his testimony, he's been given a get out of jail pass for anything that he may have done in connection with hiding evidence. And he knew why he was taking the seats out of his car at Doulos' request. Now, Michelle was overwhelmed. She was exhausted. She was in shock. She still talked to the police multiple times on June 2nd with her lawyer, on June 6th with her lawyer, and again on August 13th. She answered every one of their questions. Even when they accused her of lying, did she ever say, I'm out of here, I'm not answering any more questions? No, she kept answering their questions. It got to the point where whatever they said, she started agreeing with them, whether it was true or not. I put one of the interview points up on the wall there so you can see the way it played out, right? This is not just that they want her to be honest with her. They're saying there's no way he could have been home because of through science. But we've already explained how that works with transfer of DNA, skin DNA, how much can easily be transferred from one person to another. And here is evidence of actual physical transfer of items barehanded between Fotis, his wife, and all of his children. When Michelle gave information that was not within their narrative, that the puzzle pieces did not fit, they kept accusing her of lying. They told her she was wrong. They told her Fotis Doulos had to be at 69 Wells Lane. But the state hasn't been able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was down there. Even now, they suggest he's there. They've thrown out this darkened figure on a bicycle riding along in the area. There's no connection to any of that to the disappearance or harm that likely occurred to Jennifer Doulos.
You guys are thinking possibly she's going to get off on this and it pretty much Fotis did this? Is that pretty much the way a lot of you guys are seeing it? We are still waiting for a verdict. Nothing's happening in that courtroom.
Yes. And you remember, you also will have the report by Ms. Streeter, and we put it in. This is the part I already mentioned. She specifically described some of the things. I mean, she's talking about detail. She put every detail that she observed. That's her job. But it was about as exact, line by line, minute by minute of what happened in that house. And that easily explains why a small amount of DNA would be found nowhere other than on a faucet in the kitchen. You remember Kristen Medell, the DNA person, because she talked about how transferred DNA, they called it touch DNA, if you remember, occurs. And I submit that that's the reason, that's the more likely reason that that's the place where the DNA was found. Otherwise, what are we supposing here, that if it was Fotis Doulos, he took off his gloves, touched the faucet, and then put his gloves back on, his now maybe bloody gloves back on, walked out the door so it wouldn't be anywhere else? That's what doesn't make sense. That's what's pure speculation on the part of the state. And it's also clear that Fotis can't be in two places at once. There's also the fact, what are we going to do about getting a body or an injured woman? What is he going to transport her on a bicycle? Remember, where they saw the red pickup truck was about 300 yards, if I recall the testimony. It's up to you, not my memory, from where they found the Suburban. On a busy road, Lapham Road, in front of, near the entrance to one of the biggest parks in this area, a public park on Memorial Day weekend on a nice day, that nobody would notice anything, that there are no other cameras from any school buses that use that route showing any transfer, or for that matter, showing that the Suburban is even parked there. That also doesn't make sense. Where do you get the cleaning up supplies? How do you carry all these things? How do you get them from one vehicle to another outside that park on a busy double yellow laned road? Now, there's no evidence as to when Jennifer's Suburban ended up on Lapham Road. What you do have, and I put these up, this is exhibit CC and triple C, and you'll have these documents in paper form. But there was a question raised about whether or not that Bluetooth connection of the phone belonged to Jennifer Dulos, or maybe it was the kids, maybe it was Lauren Almeida. But at this time, at 2:56 p.m. in the afternoon, when that Bluetooth connected to her Suburban, they were long away in New York City. So we know it's not them. But we have more than that. We have the Stratford police research that shows, if you look to the right there, that there were two numbers associated with Jennifer, one being the 604 number and the other being the 499 number. And you will see that it's the number down at the bottom is that 5C number. It connects to the 499 number. You see, it was a MAC, I think they called it, the MAC number. If you look at number 2 on the right, the unique number is the same as the unique number on the left there at 2:56 p.m. There's also the report, remember, by Mr. Knuth, the forensic guy from the lab, who talked about this as well in a letter to Detective Kimball. So they knew this all along. They just didn't pursue that at all. Incidentally, in just response to something that the prosecution said, I'm not claiming that Jennifer went through the woods and got on a train. I'm suggesting that when they followed the scent, somebody followed the scent with a dog, and it ended at the train platform at Talmadge Hill Road, the Metro North. So they didn't follow up with that. Did you hear anything at all about checking the train schedule, or maybe looking at, cameras from the trains, whether somebody ran off that way after being in the presence of Jennifer? Now, Michelle did not push back when the police told her she was wrong. She asked them what they wanted her to say, and maybe she was wrong. Even when she wasn't, even when she was helping and trying to be truthful, they told her she was wrong if that didn't fit their narrative. And eventually, for example, the FedEx envelope, she told them she knew nothing about these license plates. They told her that doesn't matter. They cut her off and said, we don't need to know, that's not important. Well, it wasn't important until what? Today, when you hear the state again talk about 2024, how important that was. They didn't even let her say what she wanted to say about that. Sometimes they were mistaken, sort of like the 30 stops when it was only 3. You heard Kimball admit that was a mistake. He admitted a few times in answering questions, especially by Mr. McGinnis, those were mistakes. But the difference is those mistakes were under oath. He swore to some of these things. He couldn't remember who told him that. He didn't have any documentation. But when he swears to something under oath, if a private person does that, they'd probably get arrested and charged with perjury or false statement. For him, it's just a mistake. For Michelle, if she makes a mistake or misspeaks, it's a crime. That's the distinction that they're trying to make here. Deception, could I just have a time? 20. Deception is an interrogation tactic in Connecticut, and you heard police are allowed to lie, they're allowed to deceive, but they're threatening, when they're threatening a person to go to prison, maybe for many, many years, she's going to lose her family, she's going to lose her child. If she keeps telling them certain information, if she sticks to what she's telling them, those tactics can take a toll on memory and what you're going to remember or say, whether it's the pressure or you've been fed enough information so it changes your perception. And I'm not going to go into detail. You heard from my two experts, Professor Loftus and Professor Marion. One was an expert on memory and how people retrieve and repeat memory. Remember, this is 9 days after May 24th. And for Michelle, it was just a mundane day. Just, she did her routine. The only exception is she told them she picked up the phone. She told them that when it was in the office. She didn't have to tell them that. Why bring that up at all? Kent Mawhinney was there. You saw the video of him driving in and him driving out later. Why would she admit she's the one who picked up the phone for 16 seconds, bad connection, and she hung up? You also, and I want to just say one thing about Professor Loftus. The prosecution suggested by naming a bunch of other cases that she was involved in, that somehow she's connected to the defendants on those cases, that you should tar her with the people those lawyers represent, rather than that it was about science and what people remember and don't remember. You know, that has nothing to do with how you should judge the facts in this case. Same thing with, I would say, about Professor Marion, the linguistics expert. She told you about things that maybe you don't know about if you're not bilingual or multilingual. One of those things is something called influency. And we talk about things like, you listen to parts of those videos, maybe the prosecution would have you think, well, you're stalling for time. But she said that's a typical response for somebody who only has mid-level proficiency. And when you're hammering at somebody, they're under stress. They confuse tenses. They speak in the present when they mean to speak in the past, because in English, the present tense is the easy default. That and in the infinitive are the easiest way to speak if you're not fully 100% proficient in a second language. And things like stress and certain concepts, throwing in Spanish words in the middle of your sentence, that's all signs that you're just not proficient enough. You're just not proficient enough to handle these questions, especially when people are throwing them at you from different directions. And remember what was said in a report, which you will have, authority figures, you believe, I think it was Professor Loftus that said that. If authority figure tells you something, you're more apt to believe it, that maybe you're just wrong. So maybe she was just wrong, but maybe Fotis Duelis was there. That was his phone, not her phone. And they would have to prove to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, they couldn't even be there, because that's how they've charged us. She told them about her weekend. She told them about everything she did that Friday that she could remember. And keep in mind, we'll put up the, we'll get to it in a minute, but she told them about the socializing the night before. She told them that during that time, you'll remember, Fotis stepped out. He went and got steaks. And during that time he went out to get steaks, he had a conversation on the phone with Kent Mawhinney. You haven't heard a lot about Kent Mawhinney, other than he's been charged with conspiracy to commit murder in this case. But he seems to be like an afterthought here. He may be the and others that you'll see are in the criminal information, conspired with Fotis Duelis and others. But there's been no evidence about her involvement with Kent Mawhinney. So I suggest you can immediately discard that as something to consider in this case. But, you know, we're talking about the fact that Fotis and Pavel took the Tacoma down to 80 Mountain Spring Road the night before, right at the beginning of when Stefan Reich arrived with his wife to look at carpets and then to have dinner. But there's nothing that Michelle knew about that. She didn't know that Fotis had stopped at 80 Mountain Spring and or made a phone call to Kent Mawhinney when he stepped out to buy some more steaks. And she didn't know, there was nothing, in fact, to suggest that she knew that. On the early morning of May 24th, the thunderstorms, remember, Kimball said there were no thunderstorms we checked. He finally admitted that there were that night, and you have that map showing the red where it's all coming right down towards their house in Farmington. And that's why when her daughter called her right before 1 a.m., she went to her room and slept in that room that night because the daughter asked her to. You have seen also surveillance cameras from Eli Road, from Jefferson Crossing and Mountain Spring Road, that between the time that Michelle went upstairs to her daughter's room, and you see the Tacoma leave 80 Mountain Spring at 5:30 in the morning. There's nobody traveling on those, or there's no pedestrians, there's no bicyclist, there's no other car, nobody, not taxi, nobody dropping somebody off. The state would have you think he must have been sneaking through people's backyards in the middle of the night. But remember, we were on top of a mountain. That's why we put in that drone video. You see, it's way, way up on the top of Avon Mountain, at the pinnacle of that mountain, with views, at least from their house, facing towards Harvey. You see 100 miles. The topography was why that video was shown to you. There's no evidence he was walking, running, riding a bike, or anything between the time of Thursday night and Friday morning. We do know somebody else was in New Canaan, and that was Pavel Gumieni. You'll have that Burla report, and you'll have the pictures that show that between 12:30 p.m. and 4:21 on the Plainville-Farmington line, he's nowhere to be seen. He's disappeared. He claimed he was there all day. But first of all, you'll remember what Mr. Newt said. That dot on the lower left-hand side means that the truck was parked behind the house. He had told you he always parks in the driveway, except that day. And I showed you the video from across the street. You don't see any vehicle at all. But Newt testified that the truck started up at 12:30 and then is not seen again till 4:21. Coincidentally, that's exactly in the middle of the time when the Bluetooth shows up and attaches to Jennifer Dulos' Suburban at 2:56 in the afternoon. Just enough time to travel the 80 miles up from New Canaan back to the Plainville area, which is right next to Farmington. Then you see him at the gas station. They put in the receipt to show he's getting gas and how many gallons he got that day. Another point. Why are we not seeing any pictures of a Raptor? They spent hours, they claim, looking for Tacomas, red trucks, Raptors. Is it, first of all, credible that there are no other red trucks that are seen on the Merritt Parkway in the entire hours that they're looking? Or did they just take a clip that said this could be it, and we'll just put that into evidence to create a narrative that doesn't exist? No Raptors, no black Raptors at all. So how did...
I'm surprised, but absolutely no movement in that courtroom. I honestly thought today at the very latest, but now I'm starting to wonder.
Mr. Gumieni get, first of all, down to New Canaan or back? Where's the evidence that he didn't make a side trip? Talks about his Chinese restaurant that he went to. Can't remember where it is, what he ate, or even if he was alone. We talked about the car seats. He said he replaced these car seats. There's nothing wrong with these seats. He ripped it apart, he said. And you'll notice, especially the one on the right, that's foam rubber. If there was blood, as the prosecution just suggested, wouldn't it stain foam rubber? How do you get that out? How do you get blood out of foam rubber? Remember, it was just a small amount of DNA that was found. DNA, it could have been touch DNA. And remember, she had been in that car. Jennifer had ridden in that truck before on those seats. You also have the evidence of Pavel's phone. And you know that he searched during the month of May a whole bunch of other Toyota Tacomas. And he deleted all of his searches before the police got his phone. He deleted that he had been looking at flights to Poland. He deleted that he was looking up about the disappearance of Jennifer Dulos. And he deleted all of his search history and messages from Memorial Day weekend. Michelle didn't do any of those things. Michelle told the police, even when they insisted, when they told her that science proved that Fotis couldn't be home, that she did think he was there. She knew he had an appointment with Kent Mawhinney. And sure enough, Kent Mawhinney was there that morning. And she kept telling the police she thought he was there. And they told her they would walk out and charge her with accessory to murder. She continued to maintain that story. Fotis could have been there. Again, we don't represent Fotis, but he could have been there. The state must prove the contrary beyond a reasonable doubt. We do know from the time that Kent Mawhinney arrived just around 7:20 after Michelle left to bring her daughter to school. The timing is not a coincidence. Kent Mawhinney was there for a reason that morning, but it wasn't to practice law. He's charged with conspiracy too, but there's no evidence that he conspired with Michelle. Is he that other named co-conspirator with Fotis Doulos? There's no evidence. We don't know. And here's a different question for you to ponder. If Kent Mawhinney was a co-conspirator and he was there, why not have him pick up the phone? Or better yet, if Michelle was the co-conspirator, why have Mawhinney there in the first place? Why couldn't she be the one to pick up the phone? Why need Mawhinney there? What was his purpose? To direct her to pick up the phone? Same thing with Andreas Tutsiartis. Remember, you were just shown a translation created by the police and the prosecutors to show you about Andreas's messages. They were in Greek. They were not in Greek letters. They were not in English like you were just shown. Michelle doesn't speak Greek. And so then the question becomes, what person would then send 2 hours later a meme that you were shown again to remind you what it was, a jokey meme, if that person believed that this was all a setup so that Fotis could have an alibi while murdering his wife? And it wasn't just to him, it was to 2 other friends as well. Again, in Greek letters, not English. You also know what Michelle did that day. You heard from Hutch Haynes about his wife, Erin, forgetting her purse at the house. Was that part of a plan to forget her purse? You remember the state asked, well, is that when you were discussing the plan to murder Jennifer Doulos? And Mr. Haynes shockingly, well, what? But that's the way the question was asked of him, as if maybe he's part of this too. I submit there is absolutely no basis for any of that. It's as pure speculative that he had anything to do with it. The idea that his wife would leave a purse there just to create a reason for Michelle to be walking over there or driving over there the next morning to return it is as speculative as everything else that the state has presented. She had lunch with Fotis. She then went over to 80 Mountain Spring. You also have the Stop and Shop and going to Petu Shop and all that stuff. I put this up here because you can see there was a plan by Renia Menudis, the realtor. We wanted to show the house. We want to see it on Saturday. Can we arrange it? And he goes, sure. Now, why would he agree to let a house be shown to strangers on Saturday morning early if he's using that house as a staging ground for destroying of evidence? I don't know, getting rid of clothing, getting rid of body, whatever the state is claiming is going on at 80 Mountain Spring Road. That makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. There are 4 trips that Michelle told the police she made going back and forth. The first time she brought the wrong kind of vacuum because it didn't have a central vacuuming system. So yeah, 4 or 5 minutes she goes back. She told them in the timeline she prepared for the lawyer, which you have, that she went back and forth. Why put that in if this is part of some nefarious scheme? Why list that? I realize I'm getting close to my time here, so I'm going to have to skip over some of this stuff. The police quizzed Michelle over and over again. These were things that it's a test she just couldn't pass. They insisted she lied. They had a big chart of what they said she had said on other occasions, and then tried to trick her when she said something that was different than what she had said months before. She told people that she had a fire in the fireplace, and Petu, if you remember, said she did that all the time. These are little clips from a motion-activated camera, and that's what you see. What was she burning in that fireplace? Firewood. Just like Gumieni said when he helped her bring wood up to the house. You also, if you looked at those videos, see how windy it is. It was very, very windy. Those trees are blowing all over the place, and you're on top of the mountain. So it is not unreasonable, even in May, to have a fire going in your fireplace. Now, if you go to the garbage bags on Albany Avenue, and you look at those, you also can speculate what could not have been burned. You could burn garbage bags, you can burn ponchos, you can burn cloth, you can even burn sponges. Why not do that? Those are the items that would be, quote, incriminating. Police had that house, Fort Jefferson, seized for over a week, that the evidence shows, and they found nothing. They went in there with cadaver dogs, other canines. They found no trace of any evidence that connected that house to the disappearance of Jennifer Doulos. Briefly, I'm just going to mention a few other items since I'm running out of time. There's the Tacoma key issue that was brought up. The key was sticking out of the side of the truck when everyone was leaving, and as soon as FOTUS called her to bring it back, she brought it back to suggest, as the police have, that there was something nefarious or evil about it. Why didn't you just say she didn't have the key? Why not come back in the 7 minutes that you came back? When it comes to the issue of the gum, and I'm going to end with that, and with one other thing. I'm going to end, actually, there's the gum. You will see that she's wiping her hands. She's not picking something up. So when the police told that to Colangelo, they were giving him false information. And I just want to play, that's going to be the last thing. I'm going to play that clip from the from Colangelo.
So we are, looks like we're at 2:20.
I mean, I don't know if it's very close to it. I just don't think she, on this story in back, you know, on this insurance. I don't think she knows. No. She writes, she's very happy about Starbucks, so it's hard for her. Why? If I was gonna go around the city with Richie Colangelo, because we wanted to make sure that all of our trash over the city, I remember that. It would have just slipped my mind. We're gonna do it one day, but we're not.
Unless
Unless
unless she's legitimately on the phone, talking and texting, and she's not paying attention.
Right.
And then
she went outside the car, got up, she told me, she knows, she's
outside.
She was open, her door was open, and she got outside, she had a problem. Her story is that she dropped gum and she realized it was sticky, and she wanted to go, he got there. I thought the gum, she dropped. She's like, that was one person in the world.
One person in the world who picks up. One person in the world who picks up gum. She never said that she picked up gum. Here's the state's attorney, the chief law enforcement officer for this judicial district, saying she doesn't know. Maybe she doesn't know, and you've got the 3 detectives telling him something that's false to get him to come off the notion that she doesn't go. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, if he thought she didn't know, then that's reasonable doubt right there. This trial is a tragedy, no question about it. It is a tragedy for many people, including people that are sitting here in this audience, in this courtroom right now. But this case here is not about sympathy. It's not about antipathy and revenge. There is only speculation and no facts. We are all sitting here in hindsight, deciding what happened after the fact, what one should have known versus did know. What we can do when Michelle, for example,
You've got 1 minute.
Thank you. When Michelle picked up FOTUS from the car wash, she didn't go in there. She had nothing to do with what FOTUS Doulos planned to do with that vehicle on that occasion. Now, I don't get another opportunity. You may think that the state has a second bite of the apple. That's not fair, but it's important for you to understand the reason for this is they have the burden of proof on everything. We don't. So they do get to speak last, but I want you just to remember that they have a burden of proving beyond a reasonable doubt each element of each of the crimes the judge is going to read to you. And I ask that you reach the correct verdict, which is not guilty. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
All righty then. What do you guys think? Hey, Bill, here.
Sure.
Yes.
Good morning.
Before you proceed, Attorney McGinnis, the jury would like a brief break.
Yes, sir.
We will continue with the closing arguments at 12. Counsel stipulate, please.
Yes, Judge. Yes, Your Honor.
Attorney McGinnis.
Last night, when I was thinking about what I was going to say to you this morning, it occurred to me what this case is really about. It is about a mother's worst nightmare. It is about a mother being taken away from her children in life or in death. It is about Petros, Theodore, Christiane, Constantine, and Noel, who went to bed on May 24th, not knowing where their mother was, and she has still not arrived. That's what this case is about. And so the question becomes, who is responsible for Jennifer Doulos' death? Now, the defense in their closing argument suggested a couple of different things to you. On the one hand, they said it's likely that she's dead, thus leaving the possibility open that she's still alive. Do any of you really believe that? The other possibility is that Fotis Doulos is this monstrous murderer. And still a third possibility that Fotis Doulos wasn't responsible, but Jennifer Doulos is dead nonetheless. But what you didn't hear a lot about in the closing argument from the defense was about Hartford Run and the dump of the evidence. You didn't hear much about that. Very tangentially, they addressed it. I pose this question to you. Do any of you doubt that Fotis Doulos is responsible for the death of his wife? Do any of you doubt that he was in New Canaan on May 24th, 2019, murdering his wife? How else would he have had her bloody bra, her bloody shirt, blood all over the bags, his DNA in a glove found inside the trash? How? And so when the defense suggests that to you, I suggest that's not reasonable. And so once you conclude that Mr. Doulos is responsible for the death of his wife, you then go to the next questions, which are, is this defendant legally responsible for her death? Is this defendant legally responsible for conspiring to tamper with evidence, for acting as an accessory to tamper with evidence? Was the defendant motivated to harm Jennifer Doulos? I want you to make no mistake about this. This defendant hated Jennifer Doulos. She referred to her as a bitch who should be buried next to the dog. Now, I'm just going to say this because we're going to talk about Mr. Gumieni in a few moments. The defense is trying to have it both ways. Disbelieve Mr. Gumieni about that, but believe him about the remark the following week. We'll talk about that. She had animus towards Jennifer Doulos. Even in her interviews, you heard it. And by the way, you're going to have the interviews, so you don't have to take my word for it. She referred to Jennifer Doulos as a manipulator. She said, you people are toxic, referring to Fotis Doulos and Jennifer Doulos. She said that since she moved to Connecticut, it had been 2 years of torture. She even admitted, if you caught it, that she demanded that Fotis Doulos go to therapy with her because of Jennifer Doulos. everything was not okay. And when the defense gets up here and they say to you, well, the report, everything was going so well, there was no motive, Fotis didn't have a motive, Michelle didn't have a motive. Think about what she actually said about that report for a second. Jennifer is trying to manipulate you, Fotis. Stick with the courts. She has borderline personality disorder. So even after the report came out, this defendant didn't buy it. This defendant didn't think everything was going to be okay. This defendant needed to go to therapy to see how Jennifer Dulos being in her life was going to impact her future. And so when they say that there was no motive, when they say that there's no evidence that Michelle was motivated to commit this crime, I submit to you that is completely contrary to the evidence. And I also just want to say this, and I don't quite know where this fits in. That's for you guys as the fact finders to decide. There's something unsettling about the defendant and Mr. Dulos fooling around on the passenger side of that Tacoma on May 24th, 2019. And you'll recall that from the third interview. And where that fits into all this, I'm going to leave it up to you to decide. The defendant in this case repeatedly lied to investigators. Repeatedly lied to investigators. What does that say about her culpability? What does that say about what she knew in advance? What does that say about what she knew was going to happen to Jennifer Dulos and what she knew they did after the fact? So let's run through some of the things the defendant said to investigators. I showered with Fotis Dulos on May 24th, 2019.
When I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, and I get into the shower. I don't wet my head, usually because I take a fast shower to take me going. Fotis jumps into the shower with me.
Now, here's what's interesting about that. She is giving the investigators an awful lot of detail, isn't she? I didn't wet my hair. Fotis jumped in the shower with me. And of course, we know where that came from. This is what she told investigators about where Fotis Dulos was on the morning of May 24, 2019. I saw Fotis talking to Kent in the office.
I saw Kent, the waiters there. They're talking in the further, have you been in the house now?
Just explain.
They're in the table down the office.
They can't do who?
And Fotis.
Can't do Fotis.
I grab my computer.
All these details. He's talking to Kent at the table in the office. I grab my computer. You know he's in New Canaan murdering his wife. You know that because of all the evidence, the DNA evidence, the trash in Hartford. So what is she talking about? I didn't see Fotis's phone in the morning on the 24th.
Morning that Jennifer went missing. Is that straight from as usual?
I didn't see the company. Yes, probably.
So if she was innocent of being part of all of this, I wonder why she lied so much, because they caught her a ton of times. What you think?
It's weird.
She told investigators she didn't see the phone. She told investigators she saw Fotis in the shower. She told investigators she saw Fotis talking to Kent Mullinex. Until she didn't. Wait, I actually didn't see him.
Every morning, or shower or in the room. I did.
Did you see him in the house at all?
I did not see him in the morning in the house.
There's no notice, nothing. When was
Didn't see him. As the investigators get more evidence and she sits down for a third and final interview. Now all of a
Not
sudden she didn't see him.
interesting.
Wait, I actually did see his phone. And incidentally, I just happened to answer the one phone call that he had in his timeline, the phone call that he set up the night before.
Okay. The day of the you see Ken.
Yes.
Moses' phone
Yes.
is on the glass table
Yes.
in the office
Yes.
where Ken is located.
Yes.
When you go.
Now, I am just going to say this. Her lies were so profound that the defense brought in 2 experts to try to explain them away to you. So what I suggest to you about those experts is, number one, Dr. Loftus couldn't point to a single thing, not one thing in this record that the police officers fed her. Not one. So when the defense attorney gets up and says, you'll see in the report authority figures, I asked her on cross-examination, did the officer suggest that? I don't recall. Did the officer suggest that? No. Not one thing. And it's interesting too, we talk about language proficiency, we talk about why she may have said the things that she said. I'm going to tell you exactly why, members of the jury, you should reject that. If that's really the case, she has memory lapses, she has false implanted memories, she doesn't speak the language. If that's really what's going on, why is she so good on details that don't matter? And so bad on details that incriminate her? Why? How does she know she bought parsley at Stop and Shop? She even told the police, if you'll recall and you watched the interview, that when she went up to Starbucks, she tried to order a chocolate croissant and they were out. That's the kind of detail that she provided. And yet when it comes to things that incriminate her, language gap, memory gap, you exercise your common sense. You're smart people. You get it. This is not reasonable. Here's the thing about the lies also. She doubled down on it, didn't she? When Detective Clabby told her during that first interview that Fotostulos had murdered his wife, after that, she went back to, I saw him in the house. She doubled down on these lies. In her second interview, she said she never read Fotostulos' timeline. That's interesting, isn't it? Because his timeline, you'll recall, notes the call from Greece, notes the call from Andreas, because it was designed to be an alibi for him, just like she was. And as you know, that phone call was arranged the night before. This defendant was undoubtedly part of this plan to kill Jennifer Dulos. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The cops asked her, why wasn't Hartford in your timeline? Oh, I was going to write that, but I got interrupted. Isn't that a coincidence? Isn't that convenient? Speaking of that, you heard the defense talk about Kent Mawhinney. The evidence is that when that phone call came in, what did Kent Mawhinney say to the defendant in her own words? Does anyone remember? Is this the call? The call. Isn't that strange? Freudian slip. You only have to find that the defendant conspired with one other person to find her guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. And it's obvious here that she conspired with Mr. Dulos. She was part of his alibi while he was in McCain and murdering his wife. In the second interview, she told investigators that Mr. Dulos hadn't told her what to write in her timeline, but by the time we get to the third interview, he told her. So you think about that. Why is someone who is innocent lying so much? That's a question for you to answer. Now, I want you to also think about 80 Mountain Spring Road and the timing of everything. Why would Mr. Dulos, and again, the evidence is overwhelming that he murdered his wife. So why would Mr. Dulos invite her to 80 Mountain Spring Road to clean the house while he's cleaning the Tacoma that you know was involved in this crime, unless she was involved? Why would she bring cleaning supplies? Think about it for 1 second. I want you to just think about that. Fotis Duelis' head. While I clean blood out of a Tacoma from my estranged wife's death, can you clean the house? Is that reasonable? To say nothing of the fact that she completely omitted the Tacoma from her first 2 interviews. Why was that? Why wasn't the Tacoma mentioned? Why wasn't that brown stained paper towel mentioned during the first 2 interviews? Also, think about how the defendant described going to 80 Mountain Spring Road. She says that initially, Fotis Duelis called her to bring cleaning supplies. She kind of is distancing herself from what was going on down there. But you know that they actually went together. And it's not until she's pressed that she admits that they went together. And it's corroborated by the surveillance footage.
Bring clean supplies for to clean the house.
Okay,
For Franky.
okay.
That's more or less what I remember. And he called me like at 1:50 something, and he calls me like at 3.
Well, let me just tell you that at 1:33, Fotis is driving to Jefferson, or driving to Mountain Spring. And by 1:36, you guys are both arriving at Mountain Spring.
Okay, so I went with the cleaning stuff.
Okay, but you went with him. You guys are both driving into the driveway together, like literally one right behind the
We
other.
went together.
So you say, well, Attorney McGinnis, that was just an innocent memory lapse, no harm, no foul. Put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that. Why would the defendant go to 80 Mountain when you know that this cleanup is going on? Think about what the defendant brought to 80 Mountain and what was later found in the trash.
Go.
Davis, yellow and green.
And you know what color the bags were?
Yeah.
So it got cut off, but they were asking her what the color of the sponge was. And she said yellow and green. What color sponge was found in the trash in Hartford with Jennifer Duelis' blood and DNA on it? What type of bags were found in Hartford with Jennifer Duelis' blood and DNA in them? With Jennifer Duelis' bloody bra and shirt in them? Think about the fires. 3 separate fires on the afternoon of May 24th, 2019. None of those made the timeline. Just like Hartford didn't make the timeline. Just like the Keys didn't make the timeline. Who's lighting a fire on Memorial Day weekend? Better question. Who's lighting 3 fires on the Friday before Memorial Day weekend on a day like that? The fact is that she lit 3 separate fires at a time, and you know with certainty that the cleanup of Jennifer Duelis' murder is going on. And the phone data shows that she was at the house by herself. I find that really odd that you would have 3 separate lightings of a fire in one day. I mean, morning and night, some people maybe. Some people, like I was explaining through the winter, it was like an all-day thing, but I've never heard of someone putting it out, then putting it back on, and then putting it out, and it seems a little odd to me. Shows that she was at the house by herself. Her admissions show that she was at the house by herself lighting those fires. The surveillance shows her going back and forth repeatedly. 5 minutes at a time, 9 minutes at a time, fire, fire. She's not involved? Pavel Gumieni. One person ran towards the Tacoma, embraced it, and another one avoided the Tacoma. You guys will recall that image that the defense admitted into evidence where Pavel Gumieni is at the police department with oil looking to get his vehicle back. Does that sound like somebody that was involved in this murder? Everything that Mr. Gumieni said to you was corroborated by video surveillance, the infotainment system, the gas receipt. There's even surveillance footage of him leaving with the dirt bike in the back of his vehicle. You guys will recall that. You'll remember that there was only one exhibit, I believe, during the trial that I actually physically handed you, and it was the surveillance shot because it was difficult to see with the plank in the back. You guys will recall that. Everything he said was corroborated by the surveillance footage. Everything. And by the way, if you're going to have the temerity in closing argument to accuse someone of being involved in a murder, at least have the brass to ask them when they're here on cross-examination.
Objection, Your Honor.
Well, at this point, the court can appreciate fellow's argument, but ad hominem attacks, you can say, neither should they.
Mr. Gumieni withstood an entire day of cross-examination. An entire day of cross-examination. And he stood up to it.
I'm not sure what's going on with their feed. Let's see here. Oh, they cut it out. How long? There we go.
That's hindering. That's accessory to tampering with evidence. I want to just talk to you now, because the evidence in this case has proven the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. I want to just pose these questions to you as you head into your deliberations. Is it really just a bunch of coincidences? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant answered Doulis's phone at 4 Jefferson Crossing when he was murdering his wife in New Canaan? Is it just a coincidence that Doulis's phone is being moved and manipulated when only the defendant is home? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant brought cleaning supplies to 80 Mountain Spring Road where you know the cleanup of the Tacoma was going on? Is it just a coincidence that the call from Greece is not in the defendant's timeline? Is it just a coincidence that during the cleanup, only hours after Jennifer is murdered, the defendant is shuttling back and forth between 4 Jefferson and 80 Mountain Spring Road? Is it just a coincidence during these trips back and forth, the defendant starts a fire at 4 Jefferson Crossing? Is it just a coincidence that during these trips back and forth, the defendant starts a second fire at 4 Jefferson Crossing? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant eventually lights a third fire at 4 Jefferson Crossing? Is it just a coincidence that while Doulos is cleaning the Tacoma, she takes a brown stained paper towel from him and throws it in the trash? Is it just a coincidence that despite no one telling her to, she took the keys to the Tacoma? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant travels with Doulos to Hartford as he disposes of the evidence on the same day? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant brought black garbage bags to 80 Mountain and Jennifer's shirt and bra were found inside black trash bags? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant brought a green and yellow sponge to 80 Mountain Spring Road and 2 of those were found in the trash in Hartford? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant brought a broom and the police found a mop or a broom handle in the trash at Albany Avenue in Hartford? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant opened the door to the Raptor at the exact moment that Doulos exits the vehicle to dump those license plates in the sewer and block that other vehicle's view? Is it just a coincidence that despite her daughter not being home, the defendant panicked when the police came to the house, went to 3 separate rooms and said, "I don't want to be here"? By the way, if the police come to someone's door while their child is not home, would you expect a reasonable person to immediately go to the door and make sure the child is okay? Unless, of course, that person just knowingly committed a crime. Is it just a coincidence that the defendant followed photos to the car wash and then tried to lie about it? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant's phone number and not Doulos' number was used at the car wash? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant lied and said she showered with Doulos when he was actually en route to murder his wife? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant lied about seeing Doulos in the office, again, while he was in New Canaan, murdering his wife? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant initially denied seeing Doulos' phone on the morning that Jennifer was murdered? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant said she saw Doulos meeting with Kent Maloney at 4 Jefferson Crossing around the time of Jennifer's murder? The same information that was in Doulos's timeline? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant never mentioned starting a fire to the police until they confronted her in the 3rd and final interview? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant failed to mention that the Tacoma was at 80 Mountain Spring Road during her first 2 interviews? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant never mentioned that Doulos had washed the Tacoma during her first 2 interviews? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant answered the one call mentioned in Doulos's timeline on that morning as having been answered by him on the morning of his wife's murder? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant failed to tell police that Fotis Doulos's bicycle was at 80 Mountain Spring Road until the 3rd and final interview? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant lied about not going back to 80 Mountain Spring Road to return those keys? Is it just a coincidence that Doulos told the Bell Committee to keep the defendant, quote, out of this when the committee brought up the defendant taking his keys? Is it just a coincidence that the defendant's DNA was found on the opening of a garbage bag that also contained bloodstains, tape, and Jennifer Doulos's DNA? Are all these things just coincidences? Or is the defendant guilty? Now, during voir dire, we asked each of you, if the state proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt, would you be able to come out here and find the defendant guilty in open court? And each of you promised us that you could. We've done that. We've met our burden of proof in this case. Now, I want to show you, I have 2 minutes left here, the timelines. One last time, we're going to talk about these timelines. Now, Fotis's is to the left, the defendant's timelines are to the right. And they have been referred to as timelines, but they were really just a script, weren't they? And maybe some of you remember from English class in high school, every script has 3 acts, doesn't it? The first act was the premeditation and killing of Jennifer Doulos. The second act was the cover-up through the destruction of evidence and the defendant's lies. And now we've reached the 3rd act, except she doesn't get to write it. You do. You write the 3rd act of this script with your verdict. What's the ending going to be? Thank you.
Well done. Well
Ladies
done.
and gentlemen, you have heard the closing arguments in the matter of State of Connecticut versus Michelle Troconis. The court will instruct you on the law, but the court will do that after the luncheon recess. That instruction will take about 50 minutes. Because the instruction will take that much time, what the court has decided to do is give each one of you a complete copy of the instruction so that you can follow along. Otherwise, it would be difficult to digest those instructions as the court is reading it and you are trying to listen. We will stand in our luncheon recess. Please do not discuss the case. Please do not talk to anyone about the case. And we plan to see you at 2 o'clock.
Ladies and gentlemen, take seat in the gallery.
I'm looking for jury instructions. All righty. Well, we're at that point. It's 3:30 there. I cannot remember what time they stop deliberating. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of different opinions, isn't there? So I'll see if I can find jury instructions for this. Hmm. Well, what do you guys think? Tampering at the most? She does? Oh, wow. Isn't that something? Yeah, most do, but I didn't expect that. Yeah, I agree with that. Wow, Tony. Some of those crazy true crime women will go as far as to marry these people. Oh, they don't have to be even true crime women. They just have to be little off their rocker women. Because, I mean, I'm a true crime girl. I'm not dating anybody like that mofo. Not a hope. No, I don't. I'm not really one for jailbirds. Each to their own. Yeah, I can think of different ways to get entertained than supporting a criminal. He sure did. Yes, Ted Bundy fathered a child while in prison. Oh, and I mean, he still does have a fan club, Bundy. Yeah, he was on the row when he got married. He did. He was a little bit sneaky about it, but he did it. Are you serious? Richard Ramirez as well? Ew. Ew. Ew, right? Do you think Malad had a fan club? Old Ivan boy there, did he have a fan club? Oh, I'll never forget that, James. Probably get. Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's got a fan club as well. I'll never forget that, James. Save your electricity for Bundy. And I mean, James is speaking the truth here. That was a thing in Florida. They had that on their little picket sticks and on the radios and something else. No. Is that recent? That's a good idea. That's a good idea. Oh, he was such a lunatic. Oh, I bet he was. And then his nephew goes out and acts like a little POS and deletes one of his school buddies out there, right? Because what did he say? This is what the Malats do? I'm sure they all don't want to hear that. That was a big family. Yeah. Yeah, and there still are off and on. Yeah, Australia's got some really, really interesting history when it comes down to that type of thing. You got Malat, you've got, oh, hell no. I don't think so either. That crazy brother of his, I can't remember that brother's name, but there's no way that guy wasn't involved. He also had some of the hitchhiker or some of the, the backpackers. There we go. He also had some of their stuff, and he's like, "No, don't know how that got there. No idea. No, 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 no idea." There's a guy here in Michigan I'd love to write a book about, Stephen Grant. Oh. We gotta get you working on Discord, friend. We got lots of stuff lined up for you over there. Maybe a sister and a brother. Yeah. Last minute pardons. Yeah, there was also that TV host that was pretty disgusting. Oh, the Malats did? Is that who you mean, or the other person that you're speaking about? Malats, yeah. I can't even remember which brother it was. I think it was younger. But he's got like the wild eyes. It's like, oh yeah. Oh yeah, I don't know how that stuff got in there, but they're from like backpackers that are no longer with us. No, no, no. And I don't think that I even had anything to do with it either. It's like, okay. Good question. That's a good question. Ivan did not smoke? They held a meeting in the summer at Wallachia, where Ivan and even the Bower cop was in. Oh, are you serious? Really, eh? Oh, yeah, aren't they beauties? Mm, of course, my head's gonna go empty. I'm from Ontario. Carla Homolka and Paul Bernard. Carla Homolka and Paul Bernardo. And the disgusting thing about those two is she's out. She was out. Well, she didn't really get put in, did she? Not for any length of time. And she allowed her Paul, who they do believe was the Scarborough apist beforehand. And yeah, I would say so. So him and Carla, she gave him permission on a Christmas Eve to feed the sister some stuff that she got from a veterinarian's clinic that she worked for to give to her sister. So she'd pass out, and her husband, Paul, could have his way with the young sister. And the sister was like 15, 16 years old. Yeah, she only got a little bit of time. And he's still locked up. And I know that chokes him because she did all of this. She talked, she put everything on to Paul Bernardo. And then they found the videotapes in the rooftop of the bathroom that showed her full involvement. But it was already, the deal was done. And they did not say, well, because you lied to us, you go back in. No. She's lived in the Bahamas. She's been all over the place. Dressed to the nines. She's got little girls. Yeah, absolutely disgusting. I don't know how she was able to get away with that, basically being found that she had lied. Yeah, but life in Canada is only 25 years. So, but I mean, that's when you're first eligible for parole. I doubt Paul Bernardo will get out, if not for a while yet. He'd have to be pretty old. Yeah, Carla Homolka. Yep. And that's her. And her weirdo husband, Paul Bernardo. Yes. We are still waiting. The jury would be finished lunch for a while now, so they're in there deliberating still. And the way it's going, I don't know if we'll get one today or not. I don't know what time the courtroom closes there. Yeah, they should. They really, really should. She wasn't even on parole after that. She literally was volunteering at the school that the all-girls school that her daughters were going to. And some journalists found out about that, and that was the end of. I think she moved to Quebec for a while. She might even still be in Quebec. Absolutely disgusting people. Yeah, very well could. I was hoping to hear, I was thinking at first this was going to be fairly fast, but now I'm really starting to wonder. Yeah. This is day. Are we at day 3 now? We might be on day 3. We're on day 2. Okay. We were busy with the other cases, so I'm happy to at least, we did the beginning of this case. So I thought it'd be really nice to be able to cover the end result. And I'm personally hoping that she gets locked up for a very long time because I think she knew. That's what you said, Michelle's friend's testimony. There is a lot of information. But, a lot of times they just go in with their minds already made up, and that's kinda how I was hoping it would go. Yeah, a couple hours. They did have a couple hours at the end of Tuesday. So we've had this is our second full day, I guess, then? But yeah, nothing's budging. Does anybody know what time they quit yesterday? Yesterday was a busy streaming day. There we are. Subscribe, like, share, smash that bell. Hola. Mexi, do you have any idea what time they ended yesterday? 5? Okay. You figure, yeah. So maybe another hour? Possibly. Let's see here. So they've had 2 questions so far. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else we want to. Well, I guess, guys. What the hell? Hey, Shauna. Hello, hello. That's true. Oh, my word. Well, I'll be surprised if we hear something within the next hour. I'll be very surprised, but who knows, right? I don't know. I thought we were going to hear yesterday. I thought it might be one of the shortest verdicts ever again. No, I've never seen that. Mm. Oh, in the US, Shauna? When do you guys want to jump up on panel with me? Do something a little bit different? Super easy. You don't have to show your face if you don't want. Yeah, he did have a harem. Come on, somebody jump up on panel with me. Jazzy did it on TMZ. You can do it over here. James, did you see Jazzy on TMZ yesterday? In the UK? Is that a no? Is that a hard no? Oh, I couldn't believe it. She totally panel bombed me yesterday. I had, well, she, not me, had Harvey Levin was laughing. His little buddy on his buddy on the other side of him. They're both laughing, and here I am throwing cereal at Jazzy to try and get her not to talk. So it's like, oh no! You'll have to check it out. It's quite funny, actually. Back in the 60s. Oh, I couldn't believe it, James. It was like, oh my God, no. I mean, whenever a person does those, it's only, 15 to 30 seconds long, and she just couldn't hold it in. Oh, the Moors. Yeah, yeah. Okay. But wasn't it just Ian and Myra? Did they have a buddy? Was there another guy involved with them? I thought it was just the two of them, but yeah, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. Yeah, yes. Okay, that's cool. I didn't know that. I knew he knew one of them, but I didn't realize that he knew all of them. Isn't that something? Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. Shoot, that's a sick situation right there, that one. Yeah, I think those two were a two-person team, I guess. And they're not the only ones, are they, from the UK? There's other couples that were doing similar things at different times. Yes, that he was. Yes, that's what he was. He was. His mom was a working lady. I'll have to refresh my memory. I'm exhausted today. Oh yes, then there's also him. Yep. And she had, I can't remember how many kids. Jimmy Seville, quite sick. He's another sicko, isn't he? Trying to remember his name too, Maxie. He's pretty gross. And he might have been from Belgium. I think he was. I think you're right. Yeah, Fritzl. Fritzel's sounding right. Fritzl. That's the freak? Yeah. Yeah. Pretty gross. Yep. Yeah. He went through a lot of effort to make up a room in that basement. Unreal. Okay, there was an older couple also in the UK. She would entice them and then throw them in the vehicle and bad stuff happened. Yep. Nielsen, Tobin, Brady. Yes, that's Ambrose and Fred. Mm-hmm. That's them. That's them. Yeah, we think that women just started doing this. Well, this has been going on for a long time. Yep. House of Horrors. And, Carla Homolka, it was basically the same deal. She would approach the girls, and when they would get them back to the house, that's when stuff happened. It was both of them. Yeah, the world is smaller now. Sounds good. Thanks for stopping by, Shauna. Much love, friend. World is definitely smaller now. So you know what, guys? I am going to end the stream, I think. Unless I just leave it open for another hour and go do what I've got to do. What do you guys think? Do you want me to leave this stream open so everyone can visit while I do what I've got to do? Or should we call it? I'm willing to do either one. Not yet, friend. Still waiting. We're still on verdict watch. And I think they start deliberating either within within the next half hour to hour is my thoughts. Okay. Okay. Neither am I. Well, we still have tomorrow. We've still got tomorrow. So what I'll do is I'll call this one. And if anything changes, if we get any kind of update within the next hour, I think they do. Oh, yeah, it's awesome, isn't it? I agree. As far as I know, they've got court tomorrow. I haven't heard differently. Okay, so guys, I guess we'll call it. It's been a long day, hey? And yeah, I fully expected this to be resolved by the end of today. So you never do know, do ya? So again, thank you very much for hanging out with me today. And let's hope that if it doesn't come within the next hour or so, that we hear tomorrow. So you guys all have a great evening, and I will see you.